Entertain, I guess, a motion to call this meeting to order.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Good. Any opposed?
I almost voted against that one.
It's going to be a good day. First item on the agenda is Dr. Baldwin.
Well, it's that time for our annual capital outlay report, for our facility needs report, and then Ms. Frisbee and I will be presenting the projected operating budget for 2017-18. So a lot of data is going to be coming your way. I'm going to, in my superintendent comments, again, more specifically recognize those individuals that have been at the forefront of putting this all together for you, but this is almost becoming a well-oiled machine. And when you look at all the data that's in front of you in these particular handbooks and directories, it takes a human being along with the computer in order to put all this together, but it's the human aspect of it to present it to you in a concise, as simple as possible a manner so that you can understand it and make it applicable. And I truly believe that that's the type of presentation that this board has been provided in my years as superintendent. The first aspect of this is going to be the capital outlay budget. And I do want to just preface by saying I honestly believe, as a principal, as a young principal, I was a part of this process. I sat in the room. I represented the particular district I was principal in. And I truly believe it is a model program, model process of collaboration, because our districts are represented, the levels of schools in terms of size are represented, and having been in that room myself as a participant, direct participant, I can tell you, even though I came as the principal of Reynolds High School, when you sit there and you see the entire district in front of you, that perception that may be out there in that, well, that guy's going to take care of number one, Reynolds High School, and number two, Reynolds District, to the neglect of other schools and other districts. I can tell you that is just not true. I've not sat as a direct participant as a principal in a while, but I sit in the room and I see that collaboration and I hear that discussion, and the end result is that what's provided to this committee is 4 to 5 times the number of requests that the budget will handle. So there has to be a process that will fairly evaluate the time and efforts each school provided to put their requests in front of this committee. And again, from a process standpoint, I think it's just exceptional. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Madam Chair, and let's get started.
Well, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. The first on the agenda is Deborah Frisbee. Ms. Monica. She wore her...
You had Tim fairly excited because he thought he was going to have to go first.
Oh, well, okay.
It's all good. It's all good. We're ready.
She wore her referee outfit today, so we can't fight. Not that we would.
I'm mashing that the wrong way. Technology's great when it works, but there you go. Okay, we'll get started. And you should have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation to follow along with. Superintendent Baldwin, Madam Chair, and members of the Board of Education, I am pleased to present to you the 2017-18 proposed operational budget. This presentation includes a per pupil expenditure comparison, which I think is helpful to see some trends. We're also going to talk about ADM trends. We're going to talk about funding sources. And then we'll get into the meat of our operational budget proposal and then talk about some things that may or may not impact that, and then our timeline for submission to this. So let's get started. So oftentimes, the public may come to the superintendent or the Board of Education and ask, what is your per pupil expenditure? How much do you spend per child? So this slide shows a 5-year comparison of the per pupil expenditure for Buncombe County schools through 2015-16. Of course, we don't have 16-17 data because we're still operating in that year. So right now, for last year, we were ranked 87th out of 115 LEAs for the state per pupil expenditure. So what that tells me is that there are 28 LEAs that receive less state money than Buncombe County schools. And you see that we have maintained that rank for the past 2 years. The federal, you can see that it has declined over 32% over this 5-year period. The reason for the majority of that is because back in 2010-11, we were allocated what they call ARR money, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act money. So it was a federal funding program, and we were able to use that money to help pay for certain expenditures, mainly personnel. But we got some money in for preschool program, we got some money for Race to the Top and things like that. So that helped. You can see 2011-12, our PPE was 788, then it went to 787, and now we're all the way down to 553, I think. That kind of has an angle. 534. So over the years, our federal funding has obviously decreased. So that's why we have such a huge percent there. And then you can see that we're ranked 20th out of 115 LEAs for our local per pupil expenditure. And it's gone up 25% over that time frame. Now what that tells me is that local is having a pickup. We're losing revenue sources from other funds. So, and then the next chart shows where we are in comparison to the state, the average state per PPE. So we're right close with the state, but we're below the federal and the local. So
The ever where our federal really has impact, Susanna can attest to this, is especially in 2 areas with our Title I and our ESL funding, and also our exceptional children funding.
absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
that's a majority of those funds are coming in from federal.
Yes. The majority of those programs are funded with federal dollars. And every year, you know, we reach out to make sure that we are applying for any additional grants that we can get to help offset the losses that we're getting. So it's a constant challenge to find additional funds, to be honest with you. This next slide just shows it's a different representation of where we are compared to the state. And so you see the last year there, we're very comparable with the state PPE, but the other two were below where the state rank is for that particular year. And this does not include child nutrition. If child nutrition were included in this comparison, then the federal dollars would be a little bit more, because that is a federal program. But child nutrition is self-supporting. It's like a business. They have a profit and loss. So to get a better picture, this is the better comparison to use. This shows about 23 years of history for our allotted ADM and our percent change. And as you can see, the past 2 or 3 years, we have received a reduction in our ADM. And a lot of that is attributed to the charter schools and school choice. Our expected allotted ADM for 2017-18 is the 24,372, which is about 315 students fewer than we were allotted in 16-17. So. Another thing that I think is important to know is that here we have 5 years worth of funding sources, and again, this depicts what we have shown on the per pupil expenditure. You see in 2012-13, the blue is the state public school fund. It was at 64%. Federal was at 12%, and local was at 24%. So 13-14, federal declined and local increased to 26% of our budget, and state was about 1% more than the previous year. For 14-15, we continue to see the decline in the red, which is the federal, and again, state and local pick up that difference. And a lot of this increases in the state is basically salary and benefit increases. There has not been a lot of new state money. And again, you see the trend. It looks like state has stayed the same for 2 years. And for this year that we're currently in, of course, this is through the end of April, we're at the same percentages that we were in the prior year. So again, these two revenue streams are having to pick up where we're losing money in the federal programs.
Madam Chair, is it okay if I ask a question, or are we holding questions till the end?
Is it all right with you, Ms. Frisbee?
Yeah. So I understand why the federal would be declining with the end of the stimulation money and all of that stuff. What I still don't understand is why we're so much number 90, whatever it is, in the state. So why are so many other school districts doing better than we are in terms of attracting those federal funds?
There are two big state revenues that Buncombe County School is not eligible for. And one is the small school revenue and one is the low wealth revenue. And for some districts, that's a huge amount of money.
And those are federal dollars?
No, it's state
Okay,
dollars.
so it's
They're
the
state
federal,
dollars.
but I don't understand why other school systems are able to be so far ahead.
Well, there are grants that tie into the small county and low wealth that are federally funded that we are not eligible for. So it's basically, if you meet the criteria, then you can apply, but if you don't, then you're not eligible to receive those funds.
So there are fewer of those opportunities for us to even apply for it. It's not that we're being less successful.
That is
at our
correct.
grant writing.
That is correct.
It makes a huge difference, Cindy. All you have to do is walk into a school system that gets those funds, and visibly, it's noticeable what they have and what we don't. And they're usually small, rural schools.
And a lot of those grants may target your socioeconomic students and disadvantaged students, and that is tied back to your ABM population too. So, because everything is based on students. So, it's not that we're not doing the best job we can. It's just that those resources are not available for our district.
And you can have some LEAs that'll skew that too.
Oh, absolutely,
Statistically.
absolutely. That's a great question. So as we get into our budget process, and because we have received less federal dollars and things like that, we have implemented cost saving strategies, and you all know this, that we have cut or absorbed 173 positions during this time frame. We've also reduced hours of employment for certain employee groups. And then we continue, through the help with the maintenance department, to implement energy saving programs. We've got the LED lighting project that's going to bring some cost savings to the district. But the great thing about bullet 1 and bullet 2 is that we were able to do all this without having to rip any employees. We were able to take care of all those through attrition. And we try to protect and preserve our human resources. So that's a great thing. And we constantly are looking for ways to save money. I'm all the time looking for ways to do things more efficient and more effective. But maintenance really steps up to the plate and helps us with this and energy savings and things like that. So let's talk about the nuts and bolts of our proposed budget for 2017-18. Our data is based on the governor's proposed budget because that's the only budget we have in hand. It's my understanding that the Senate may have a budget proposal as early as the beginning of next week, but right now, we are basing our information on the governor's budget. So this would support our locally funded people, which is around 12 to 14% of all of our employees of Buncombe County Schools. So we're proposing that it will cost an average 5% pay increase for our certified personnel. This would be teachers and licensed employees. It will cost $829,428. For the non-certified, an average of 3% would be $799,024. So for the salary increases, and this would be to maintain their salary level at the same as the state paid, we're looking at $1.6 million there.
And this is the local operational budget only.
Yeah, this is just local, yes, sir, absolutely.
This is simply what we're asking the commissioners for those teachers.
And
They're in addition to what the state
non-certified,
is funding.
absolutely,
Not
absolutely.
state paid teachers.
No, not state paid. This is just for our locally funded positions.
And roughly 14% of our
Yeah, 12 to 14%,
personnel
absolutely.
are locally paid.
Right now, that number is about 535, but it does fluctuate through attrition, changes in positions, and when people live here and stuff like that. So we strategically place those people there. So along with the salary increases, you always have increases in retirement and health insurance. So for this population, the locally funded employees that are eligible for these two benefits, we're looking at $616,000. So, and again, this is all the best information we have available and based on the governor's proposed budget.
Yeah, but before you go there, I want to re-emphasize, this is a budgeting nightmare because it's all about timeline and timing. Case in point, we are required by state law to provide our county commissioners with a budget proposal prior to May 15th. Now, what you see up there is our best estimate because we only have one of three components of the final state budget, what determines the final state budget. We have the governor's budget, which traditionally tends to be a high number. Traditionally, that's not always true. We've yet to see the Senate's version of the budget. This year, Senate comes first, House comes second. So when we present this, in preparation, when it's presented to the commissioners, again, this is the best data that we have in front of us. This is a timeline issue. And it's not only for Buncombe County Schools, this is across the state. This is for Asheville City Schools, this is for AB Tech, and again, just a reminder that 61% of the projected budget that you're going to be shown for 17-18 are state funds. So the majority of our funds for operational purposes come from the state. So this is a real issue.
You're exactly correct. This part of our local budget proposal is what I refer to as expansion or sustaining operations. So in 2017-18, we will be implementing the final phase of the Nesbitt Discovery Academy. It's hard to believe that that school's been open 4 years. So we'll be opening grade 12. So with that, we are requesting 3 core subject teachers, and you see the areas, English, math, and social studies. And that cost of $67,000 is based on the average salary for Buncombe County Schools. So that includes benefits and the local supplement. So with that being said, that's $201,000. We have a counselor grant that we've had for multiple years that's going to expire on June 30th of 2017. So we would like to maintain those 4 positions. So the average cost for that group of people, because their master's pay is a little bit higher, so that's $73,000. So we need $292,000 to maintain those 4 positions. And then we will have year 2 of the new math textbook adoption, and those are consumables. So that's why we have to buy those every year.
But just to clarify, I want to make sure I understand, what you're saying is that's the average cost per position,
Per position,
or
yes,
salary
ma'am.
and
Yes,
benefits.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So for expansion and sustaining current operations, that totals $691,000. And to summarize this, of course, when you add the salary increases and the benefits, that totals the $2.2 million. The expansion again is $691,000, and then this would be year 2 implementation of our certified local supplement, and that amount is the $1,648,000. So our request to the county for 17-18 totals almost $4.6 million.
Now, what you don't see up there is a component that since January was in that request to the commissioners for support. And that was the K-3 classroom allotment. And I think I've inundated you with email and changes. In one case, I think I sent you one email and 30 minutes later got something from Raleigh and sent you an update. But the original projection for our school system under the previous law that was set to go into effect for 17-18 was an additional need for 45 classroom teaching positions K-3. And that roughly equated to $3,015,000. And so we began in January putting strategies together with how to address this. And needless to say, keeping classroom teachers protected at all costs, regardless of what particular area that they taught. And then the second level being certified support, media, counseling, social workers, and third level K-3 instructional assistants. Remember, we've kept those 3 priorities since 2009, 2010 when we first faced some significant budget challenges. Those really haven't changed. So the strategies we put in place truly fell short of this $3 million. So we had projected coming to the commissioners for assistance with this, even though, again, this was a state decision. Thankfully, give thanks to the state Senate for coming back to the table and providing a compromise, which in essence is a compromise that assists us for 1 year. We have a 1-year reprieve because the previous law and all the implications now are projected to go into effect for 2018, 2019. I think we've got to keep that in mind. It hasn't been eliminated. But what we're dealing with 17, 18, the reason that you don't see it up there is that we feel like, because it's such a significant difference, 45 positions originally needed, and we're now looking at 7 classroom teaching positions. That will also include, we project, up to 5 additional assistant positions, new positions, because, again, K-3 instructional assistants, kindergarten, first grade, we currently provide 1 assistant per kindergarten, first grade classroom. In grades 2 and 3, we provide 1 instructional assistant per 4 classrooms. 4 years ago, that was 1 per 2. So we haven't moved in the right direction with that, but we've still maintained those assistants there. So the way we want to address that, because now that figure goes from $3,015,000 to the personnel that will equate to about $639,000. And we have a plan in place now to work with that internally. We're looking at restructuring support outside, support positions outside of K-3 and protecting K-3, combined with reductions and cost savings from district-wide services. And we as a central office have said if there's any adjustments made out in the schools, we will come to the table and we will make adjustments up here. And that's indeed what we have done. The thing is that I want you to remember is that what our proposal, what our strategies that we have in place to address that do not eliminate an individual in Buncombe County Schools from employment. They may look a little different in terms of placement and the responsibilities that are in front of them, but as we have tried to do since 2009-10, when we have to look toward any type of personnel restructuring, we've done our very best to make sure that the human beings stay in place, but through attrition and through new positions, such as the 5 new for assistants, that we're able to make adjustments and keep everyone whole. So again, that's the reason that that's not included. I can't project that being the case for 2018-19. So I think that's important to say. I hope and I think there's a lot of dialogue going on, and we'll hopefully continue to go along in terms of addressing personnel situations outside of the core areas, but that still remains the law to go into effect. The full impact comes back to us in 18-19.
This would be just again a clarifying question, perhaps for our newer board members. Just want to clarify that this is the proposed increase for the county appropriation, right?
Yes.
This is not the total that we are
No,
asking them.
this
This
is
is the total over and above what we
What
are
we're currently getting, yes ma'am, yes ma'am. So let's talk about a few things that may impact our 2017-18 costs. The great thing about it is there's not a new charter school opening in Buncombe County in the fall of 2017-18. But we do have Franklin School of Innovation, which will be adding grade 12, and then Fernley will be adding grade 4. They're actually in Henderson County, but we do have some students that attend that. So based on the best data we have, we are anticipating that we're going to lose 213 students to charter schools for 2017-18. That is about 8 teaching positions, so that would be about $536,000 loss for us based on that average salary. And then there are other things that could potentially impact the cost. You know, the Opportunity Scholarship is always on the table, so that's where they pull money and give money to individual homes so they can, it's school choice where they get to pick where their child is educated. The Virtual Charter School Initiative, we're currently paying for 54 students that do that right now, and that increases every year.
You're going to see that in one of Tim's slides, the 2 virtuals that are active in the state.
And then, you know, we have the private school and the homeschool, so these are variables that potentially impact our budget.
Deborah,
Yes,
and
sir.
I'm sorry to keep
No,
interrupting.
it's all good.
Can you
It's-
just get back to that last,
Absolutely.
because I want you to key in on a key word right there, and that is total estimate.
Yes.
And I want to give credit to Deborah Frisbee, I want to give credit to Cynthia Lopez, because since the convergence of the charters opening up, what they have done in budget planning is they have given a conservative number for us. And I think in all the years since the charters opened, those have been conservative numbers. They've been pretty darn close. But I want to address that because it's estimated.
It is
So
estimated.
no one needs to leave saying 213
No.
students next year are going to charter schools. This is a projection for budget purposes. And again, give these 2 individuals credit for budget planning purposes, keeping us conservative versus the opposite direction.
Right.
And schools across this state, school systems have had to close schools. So understand how important
Close
that
neighbors.
aspect is.
close neighbors have had to close schools.
Schools across the state.
That's exactly correct. And you know, in our federal programs and our special revenue programs, they have some residual impacts. You know, federal, they're having to pick up the costs associated with salary increases and benefit increases, and they don't always get extra funds to do that. You know, the state does a lot of money for that, so they're having to pick up and absorb those, which in turn may, they may have to eliminate some of the services that they're currently providing. And then, you know, we're not real sure about the stability of the federal government right now. We just don't know. So, you know, all this will impact that. And in the special revenue program, a lot of that is grants. So again, we constantly seek to find grants, but when those expire, then you have to decide what you're going to do with those services and people. So here's our timeline. As Dr. Baldwin mentioned, we have to have our information to the county on or before May 15th. And again, we don't know everything that we would like to know, but it is the law, so we will comply, of course. Barring any objections or anything, our Board of Education will hopefully approve this resolution and proposed budget at tonight's board meeting. Then we will submit our information to the county. And then contingent on, we'll present an interim budget on June 30th so we can maintain operations and carry on July 1st. And then contingent on when we get our information from the state and when the budgets are passed, then we will send the final budget resolution to the board. That ranges anywhere from September to November. We have been as late as December, but it's all contingent on when we get our information and when the final budget is approved. So, do we have any questions? Now, I will call your attention, this document here has a lot more detailed data of things that I have talked about. There's a lot of information in here, but, you know, there is, if you have questions, there's a lot more charts on the per pupil expenditure comparison and things like that, but there's a lot of knowledge in this book.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Absolutely.
Dr. Baldwin, maybe you could address this. I understand that we have some new board members and maybe to the public as well. We've said today that we have to present this to the county commissioners by the 15th, and that's state law, state statute, correct?
Correct.
They are getting, it also says we're going to present it to the commissioners on the 16th. They're actually getting this in writing from us prior to the 16th. The 16th just happens to be the date that they're meeting.
Absolutely.
And it would be publicly presented. Am I accurate in that?
There was actually, and that's a good point, there was actually a request that this presentation take place, I guess that would have been Tuesday.
This past Tuesday.
Just past Tuesday.
But our decision was, until we present it to you, the board, we can't present it to the county commissioners, so we requested a delay, and Dr. Green was kind of allowed.
We will submit this on or before the 15th.
And that meets the statute.
Absolutely, yes.
And then by the June 30th meeting, we probably won't have a lot more solid, rock solid information, which is why it's the interim budget, but going into the next fiscal year, the very next day,
We have to
have some
yes.
sort of a budget so that
Yes.
you all can continue.
Absolutely. And usually what we do is we prepare that for July through November because we don't know exactly when we're going to receive the final information. So that way we're basically covered until November. If by chance it's later than that, then we would certainly come back at an earlier board meeting and say we need one more month. So we try to cover our bases and make sure that we're good to go until November 30th. Otherwise, we have to stop. July 1st, we don't come to work.
Any other
That's
questions? Any other questions by board members? Okay, thank you, Ms. Christie. We adjusted the agenda break now because they have to fix their technology stuff. So you're breaking at this juncture.
Break now, then we'll come back to Mr. Hunt.
Uh-huh. And then we're not voting again. Did you see?
And I was supposed to say that.
I know, I'm like, what? I was supposed to I knew about it before, but I don't even know. I said, I just pointed out. I bet Max could do a better job.
Make us win again.
We're not gonna chill to fix this, so don't promise them too much. We're working on the last switch.
Right, what do you have?
Is that what that says? Go ahead, we are ready, we have resumed. We're all here, I counted.
Well, members of the board, what we have for you here is the capital outlay funding process for the year. Kind of more of an informational slide briefing for those that are new to the process. I want to kind of give you a little bit of a background. So I'm going to kind of cover, I'm going to have Ms. Frisbee talk first after I give a brief introduction. She's going to talk about the resources in general. I'll talk about the process, and Mr. Fairley will talk about the recommendations that are before you. Next slide, please. Next slide. I want you to see the committee for this particular year. Of course, you have your maintenance, your facilities, and your technology as far as the directors. That's the heart and soul of this. But if you look down to the very bottom, the last just 4 up from me, you'll see the principals that were a part of this. And we make sure that we have one for each level, elementary, middle, intermediate, high. And we also try to make sure we have every district. Now, with only 4, obviously there'll be a few districts that are not represented this year. They will be represented next year. Next slide. So, Ms. Frisbee, you'll talk about the resources.
Okay, all right. So, this slide addresses 2 funding sources for capital projects. The lottery funds, which is part of the long-range plan. These funds are approved by our Board of Education and the Board of Commissioners, and then we have to send our paperwork to DPI, and they also have to approve it. This money is restricted in that it can only be used for construction projects in schools or to retire debt service, and it cannot be used for school technology needs. Article 39 funds, which is again part of our long-range plan, and this has to be approved by our Board of Education, the School Capital Fund Commission, and the Board of Commissioners. This money can be used for school construction projects of at least $100,000 per project per site, and also can be used to retire debt service. Okay. Article 4042 funds are the most flexible source of funds, but there are restrictions, of course. And this can be used for capital improvements, and these are funds allocated by the Capital Outlay Committee. And basically, this book here that you have is your 4042 funds. So Mr. Fairley's going to talk more in detail about the other 2 funds I mentioned in his long-range capital planning.
Can you just remind me, so I know what the lottery is, but the sources of these funds, what does Article 39 mean? What does Article 4042 mean? Where did that come from? Where's it coming from?
Well, the Article 39 money is unique to Buncombe County Schools. That is a law that went in back in the 80s. And that was something that would help our school district receive additional funds for capital improvement. And I know there's a story behind it about...
I think you've heard of the Dirty Dozen that was nationwide, and we were in that category at the time. And this was local legislation that connected with state legislation, and so it came about.
And Martin Ezra was kind of behind that.
Yes.
And Asheville City Schools also has access to these funds, is that correct?
They do. The 4042 fund is just a portion, like a half-cent sales tax that was implemented many years ago. Now, that money is available for all school systems, that everybody gets part of that money. And there's two articles that outline that. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So talking about the process in itself, it's actually about a 6 to 7 month process as you look at this slide. The first two, dark blue and the next blue, is just identifying the needs and ranking those needs. Right around November to December, we go ahead and put that information out to the directors and the principals, and we ask them to go ahead and start developing those needs and basically ranking those needs for us. After that, right after the holiday break, we compile those results, and I'll have to give kudos to Amanda Butler. Did she step out for a second? When she steps back in, we need to applaud her. She is working on this process.
You give us the sign.
That's right. And then as she gets all that compiled, with Tim and Clark and Mary Beth, they start doing the costing to it, setting it up for us with what you see dead center, which is the committee process. And everybody, look back over your shoulder and give her that ring. You were going to do that. You tried to get away from it, but yeah, you can't get away from it. So we have the committee, and it's about a 4-day process. I'll show you that here in just a second. And then you get basically to the point where we are, which is basically an April-May time frame, recommending the budget, the adoption, and the approved budget. And then basically, you see what that activity take place about the July 1st time frame that a lot of these projects get started. So if you want to know just that center bubble that was on the previous slide, the committee itself, what does that look like? Like I said, it's about a 4-day process. And we try to time it when we know that the county is going to give us what that fund in total is along about the 3rd day. We don't want to know, because we want to make sure that we are funding without that, and because it's natural tendency, if you know what it is, you're not going to get that serious consideration. So we intentionally do that. So the first round is just that straight funding. Hey, do they need it? Okay, let's put it in there right now before we get into the cuts. Then you get in that first round of cut, you know it's going to have to drop some because historically, but then we get that figure on about the 3rd day, and then the cuts really get kind of intense. And then on about the 4th day, usually we're somewhere in that $500,000 range, and hopefully we've got a handle on it. We're going to be able to finish out on that 4th day, and we typically put a 5th day in there if we need to. But we do use a voting process. I put that in there for you, but I will say this past year and the years previous that I've been associated with, we really haven't had to do that. The committee talks it up, and the logic is there, and but it's there if we need to. There is a voting process, in which case the facilitator of the event and then the tie breaks the tie. And that was my note in there, remember, about Amanda Butler. So we already did that. Thanks a lot. Now I want to tell you a little bit about how we identify those needs, because we are going to adjust that a little bit. So we've always said the classification A for the principals and the directors of the departments is absolutely necessary to continue to operate. B, strongly needed to improve. And then C is future needs. That has worked for us in the past pretty good, but what has happened, go ahead and get the next slide if you would. I highlighted those in red. But A and B gets blended together. C does okay, but A and B get blended together. We have to kind of hunt through that. Recommendation was made by a director and along with one of the principals, and said, why don't we at least combine these two, and if you'll slide to the far right in green, and just make a list of category A and B, and just call it immediate needs of the school, and list them in order. So I put up there as an example 1 through 10. If 5 were A previously and the other 5 were B, just tell us honestly, in order, 1 through 10, what are the most important, all the way to number 10. They like it, so we're going to try that. The other thing is we're going to go to a more of a Google Docs process, because that's getting to be what everybody uses. It's a lot simpler. We've been using Access, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, the C before would be the B is future considerations. Definition there is not right now, but these things are moving fast. They will eventually be immediate needs. So it's more so to put it on the radar. That's not to say that they can't be funded. They can. But because there might be, they didn't see necessarily a safety consideration as an example, and maybe the facilities TM and Clark, maybe they do. But that's basically what that one, how we deal with that one. Ranking the needs, a lot of times with these schools, we try to, because it can be so vast, we try to make sure we put in there key items that are naturally going to be considered, like HVAC, roofing. So you'll see those codes up there. An S, if you're looking through it, is a school request that they have put on there. M is maintenance, something that Clark and Tim have went ahead and keyed in because it's a year. It's neat, year in and year out. So the schools don't have to worry about it. R, roofing in itself is a big item. And then the example down there, I've already covered it, HVAC, plumbing. It's kind of like putting subgroups that the schools don't have to worry about as much. They're there. They're going to be prevalent every year. And technology. Technology is in a category of itself. Very basic. Always helps us out with that one. All right, so I'm going to shift gears now. That's the process. Tim's going to talk more about the recommendations that are before you.
So these are our available funds that on the third day, we kind of find out how much we have. We have an idea that is pretty consistent, and you'll see in a little bit that it has been rising through the years, but we're always optimistic and we always kind of overfund the needed stuff, and we have to cut back to this number, okay? So here's the breakdown you'll see in your capital outlay book. That identifies all the projects that were requested, the cost, the category, and then on the far right side, if it was funded, you'll see a dollar amount. That dollar amount doesn't always correspond exactly with the request and the amount that it was budgeted, because in the committee work sessions, we often find alternatives that may cost even less than how it was budgeted, because we try to look at every single project and attach a budget to it that's in line with the school's request. But sometimes we discover maintenance, technology, and facilities by having the advantage of the principals sitting in that meeting. They often propose alternatives. So you might see a funding request and it's budgeted at $20,000, but it's only funded at 10. And that may solve the problem if we didn't have to go to that, original, more costly solution. Sometimes it goes the other way, though. The problem is more than we anticipated. So this is a breakdown of what was funded at $11 million plus. There is a contingency in there, 4%. We've held a large contingency this year because of the anticipation of the K-3. It's usually more like 3%, but it gives us a little more of a buffer. And you can see the breakdown of what was funded kind of by category. Technology being the largest and athletics being the smallest percentage of that $11+ million. In-kind replacements are things like carpet, things that we have in place that have just worn out and we're replacing them. But we do break out paving, roofing. You can see safety and code issues, accessibility issues. We do break those out. HVAC, replacing boilers, chillers, that sort of thing. You can see that comes in at about 7%. It's been pretty consistent in this breakdown through the years. Projects that are beyond the scope of this $11 million budget, they're so large but maybe deserving, they get kicked out into the long-range plan, and that we'll talk about in a little bit. Ask a question anytime, okay?
Well, I have a question. It's just, can we go back to that time? Interesting to me that safety is only 10%. You would think that those safety concerns would make up a larger piece of the pie, but maybe there just aren't that many safety.
Well, that's exactly right. It's the #1 priority in the board policy 90/20. #1 priority is safety. So they're evaluated, and if there is truly a safety issue, it's going to get priority funding. But we've been approaching it that way for a long, long time. So the number of true safety issues is a lot smaller, but they do get priority.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Okay. So then, this is across the years You can see the trends for the funding, that's the dollar sign here, that has been available. The funded requests are the dark green at the bottom, and the requests are piled on top of it there. So you can see our needs outdistance the funding available. We accept that, we know that, but you can see the funding it leveled off a little while, but it goes up a little bit each year, funded by that sales tax. The number of projects you can see peaked in 14-15. There's less projects requested. That's the number of requests, regardless of what the cost. And really the takeaway from this is that, yeah, there's less requests, but they cost more. That's really the bottom line of this, okay? And then here's that Class A, B, and C that Joe talked about, and that we're trying to combine Class A and B because of the inconsistent interpretation between what's an A and B. This will just make it easier to do. Could you go back one more time? We do fund a future. Why would we do that? This year, we funded one project, and that is the turf and track savings account. So when those turfs go beyond their life like they have, we're in the process of replacing them now, we'll have a good seed funding. It will not totally replace all the turfs, but it'll give us a head start. So we put some funds this year, I believe it was $250,000 away to save for that turf replacement project. And you can see, as you would guess, A's are the highest funded thing, B's are somewhat less, but really that is an interpretation. I mean, how many projects would truly shut down the school if it wasn't funded? That's a Class A. There's only a handful in the book, really. They're critical, they're important, but probably wouldn't shut down the school. If a roof caves in, there's a couple of examples that could shut down a school, but really very few, okay? So now we think about the future. Our needs outdistance the funding available, so that's the point of this slide, that we had Class A unbudgeted requests in that book of 11 million. That's some significant requests. They're going to show up next year, as will the B, and the C will typically move up. The C is valuable, especially to me, for kind of long-range planning, because we see kind of trends and requests. Every year there's kind of themes that show up. We see these requests repeating themselves for some form of improvement. And that's a real help to give us a heads up for Clark to manage and to put towards the long-range plan. We've busted out roofing here as and activity buses, but you can see in Class A, there's almost $500,000 of roofs that are considered really critical. These are roofs that it's hard to cut them, but Mary Beth Kingston runs the roofing program. We've determined that we can patch, repair, and limp it along until it can get funded in the near future. Quite a few Class B roofs as well. We can manage those. They'll move up in the priority list over the years. And then C is a planning item. We know these guys are on the list, and they'll again work their way up. I wanted Joe to talk about the activity buses.
Tim, before I do that, the total number of requests this year that we're seeing,
The number or dollar value?
the number of requests, I think,
562.
Just want to point that out.
178 were funded.
The activity buses has been something we've been looking at for the past couple of years. I just kind of wanted to focus that for a second. You can see what the replacement criteria there is at the very bottom, 10 years and 150,000 miles. Currently, we still have 5 buses meeting replacement criteria, and it's starting to become more of a focus for us. In the past, we've only been able to do 1. We did do 2 this year because we see that as a growing need, but I did want to point that out. And then 3 more buses will meet that criteria in the next 2 years.
What about yellow buses? Are they in this factored in here too?
Yellow buses, state takes care of, they give us a lot and then they rotate every year.
Okay, so that doesn't have to come out.
have a question, this is off topic, I'm sorry, but in terms of yellow buses, somebody was telling me that, as they're piloting seatbelts, that the state could also include seatbelts on the new yellow buses that we get. Is that something that we're doing or we're thinking?
They are, we've been paying very closely attention to Henderson County. Henderson County was one of the schools that did. It's been a while since I've asked them. For the most part, it's done well. It will come down to a state funding criteria if they go that way with that, because like I said, just as you pointed out a minute ago, the buses are state funding.
So it's not, it wouldn't be a cost to us to have
No.
seatbelts.
Mr. House, would you step back that slide just a moment, please? The current replacement criteria, is that internal to Buncombe County Schools or is that the state standard?
I believe that's our criteria for the county, and it's a little bit different than the state. The state's a little bit higher, but you got to look at the yellow buses or locally, or our buses travel great distances. We have teams that have gone down to the coast before. State, competitions, that's what they. So a yellow bus breaks down, you can fix it pretty quick and get out to it. We've got to make sure that the white buses are as best as we can, because we can't just roll out those mechanics and crews to travel 3-4 hours. So those standards got to be a little bit sharper in comparison.
Am I understanding this right? I'm seeing the unbudgeted needs, and these are activity buses, and you're telling us that there are 5 that still need to be replaced. 3 more will be hitting the replacement criteria. Now, out of the 5 that need to be replaced now, they exceeded that criteria, how many of those have made the cut? I mean, in this budget we're about to look at.
How many of those? Those are on top of what we already approved with 2 that
So
they're
still-
sitting there.
Still have 5
and they would be
more
right.
in addition to the 2. So 2's not included.
Now, let me tell you what we do to mitigate that a little bit. We know we got to catch up. We made an effort this year. We added 1 more than we typically did last year. We typically will draw those new buses on the transportation lot for those teams and activities and clubs that do have to go out. As we rotate that, those buses might sit there 2 years and they're still relatively brand new. We take them to the high schools a lot of times because their conferences and their activities are far greater in distance than typically the middle schools or even elementary or intermediate. And so it's kind of a domino effect down. But by the time you get to those buses where, some of those schools may be using those, it goes back to that safety. If they break down in Buncombe County, we can get to them much quicker than we can if it broke down in Raleigh. So we're working on it. Like I said, we picked up 1 more bus that we typically did, but we've still got some more work to do.
Thank you.
Other questions, board?
I have one about this, and I have several about the actual items in the book, but I don't know if we're to that point yet or not.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
In terms of this, just a quick, and you may have touched on this, and I was making some notes, but just maybe the last 2 to 5 years of history of the projected revenue versus the actual. So we've got a projected revenue of 42 funds. In most years, are we coming in, is that a conservative number and we're actually winding up a little more? Or are we pretty accurate with that number, or are we coming in, just curiosity, are we coming in actually with 5% less over the last
Pretty
year?
accurate number.
Pretty accurate number.
These living bags.
No, I just,
Well, and the thing that could potentially change that is if the per capita changes between actual city schools and Buncombe
Right.
County. So if theirs goes up and ours goes down, then
It
they get
affects
more
that number,
revenue,
right.
so.
and then I had several projects, I just wanted to ask, I don't know, is this the correct?
Ask and we'll figure out who knows.
First page, AC Reynolds High School, it was $190,000 request on dugouts, $10,000 funded. $190,000 request, $10,000 funded, is that simply going to be a Band-Aid and that's being pushed? That
That's
is
a
a
good
repair?
way to describe it, a Band-Aid, yep.
May I jump in while they look for his next one, also on that page of AC Reynolds High School, F9, it speaks of civil engineering requirements and costs to take ownership of Rocket Drive. When I read that, am I correct if I'm going to read that? Is the state currently responsible for Rocket Drive?
They say no, we say yes.
I have one of those roads in the North Buncombe.
Do you
district.
really? We've actually had our attorney look at this, and a surveyor that I consider the best at property disputes and such. And the surveyor went way back in the deeds and all, and it's unclear who actually owns Rocket Drive. DOT said, they say, no, it's not ours. There's gonna be a big maintenance cost
Absolutely.
coming up. So that's the one side, is the cost of maintaining that road. The other side, that's a benefit to Buncombe County Schools, is if we own it during drop-off pickup, we control that road. We could block it off if we want. We could do traffic calming. There's a lot of things. So we don't know who really owns it at this point, and that's the point of that, and it will look at what we'd be able to do if we were to own it, and then it will have to go to the higher ups to determine if we want to make that effort to put it in Buncombe County Schools' name and accept all future maintenance.
How many other high schools do not have a guard shack?
They all have them now, right?
So this is the only one that doesn't?
Right.
Oh, yeah, other than Reynolds, yeah, they all now have a, and Reynolds is a very difficult campus, as you well know, because there's so many ways in and out. But we're looking at that, how we're gonna control that campus. And the road issue is a key component of that. If we own that road, we could potentially put a guard shack and control that entire campus, whereas if we don't own the road, which road do we block and such?
Since we're talking about ways to get in and out of campuses, T.C. Robertson is also, as you know, one of those campuses.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Several
entrances.
entrances. They're also doing a lot of building around T.C. Robertson, as you know. Very high traffic area, and so their request for installing the buzzing security system, I think is a very much
High
top
priority.
priority. Do you know, are we looking at getting funding elsewhere for that, or what was the determining factor of it not being?
TC is another challenge. You know, it had that main back entrance and all, and we just installed our first couple of campus controls where we actually, have a gate and you can use your badge and get in and out at Owen and at Berwyn. So we're looking, and also Owen has a back gate that you can communicate with the office and they can allow you in. So we need a little time to have those work their way out and see how effective it is. Is it a nuisance? How well do they work? And then apply that kind of technology to TC.
In place of a buzz-in, is that what you're saying then to?
Well, I think it would be a combination of buzz-in. It has to go right from the road to the front door and the back door and the side door. All that has to really work together. And we're trying to develop a plan that has ease of operation and is effective.
So the reason then, so just so I can understand, the reason that it did not get funded this time then is because you were looking at the options of the control arms and then how that would.
It's probably a lot more than what is requested there to really solve their problem.
Okay, we're back to Mr. Bryant.
I've got several.
Okay, that's all right. That's what we're here for.
Page 33. I'm curious, the S1, the lower of those two requests at Coons. 8,000 requested, 8,000 funded, but in the very last part of it says 8,000 was approved in 16-17. So was this actually a $16,000 project?
Which project
Yes,
was that?
It was a $16,000 project. When we bid it out, we realized we didn't have the money.
So the money, half the money was there, now the other has to be approved.
That's correct, and we'll finish the job this summer.
On the next page, electric hot water heater down near the bottom on page 34, $26,000 request, 40,000 funded.
So what we decided to do there is, when Irwin was re-roofed 4 or 5 years ago, I'm not sure, the section of the building, we put in the infrastructure to support solar hot water.
Yep.
The initial $26,000 cost was just to, currently, Irwin High's cafeterias are all electric, everything in there is electric. So we're going to switch to gas-powered water heating equipment. The additional cost was for the solar feature that will reduce the overall energy cost.
Okay. Page 90, Sand Hill Medical, there's a long explanation here of safety issues, community issues, supporting data. There was a correct request for $275,000, and approved for $275,000, but I don't know what work is actually being done. There's nothing in there that tells what the project is.
So it's Sand Hill, I don't know how familiar you are with the campus, where you used to go in what's called APAC, is APAC Drive?
I think it is out there.
APAC Drive that goes to the soccer stadium, and you know,
Yeah.
Buncombe Community West used to sit there on the knoll. What this money will fund will be a queuing road, for lack of better purposes, that will go out APAC Drive, drop off the slope, go down all the way down to the end of our property, come back around and end up back into the current parking lot of Sand
It's a
Hill.
project to queue the cars.
That's correct.
I just couldn't tell, there were so many things there that I don't know what the.
And we didn't do the write-up, we received the write-ups from the school.
I got you.
And deal with them.
Page 98, Valley Springs Middle School, $15,000 for LED lighting. Why isn't that in our system-wide LED?
It's a different type of lighting than in the, let's see, we're in the auditorium. Auditorium.
Yeah, old Baker lights, the auditorium, better functioning LED.
Yes, so our LED project, for simplicity, are these lights.
Yeah.
The lights
Because
don't
the
go out.
ballasted,
Yeah, it's a totally different type of lighting. So the lights that are.
that was my guess, but I just wanted to ask, make sure we didn't.
Why is it a total different kind of lights?
Well, because why is it a different type of light?
Is it because it's an auditorium? Sorry, I
Yeah,
can't see.
it's, you know, it's an architectural type thing that's, you know, well, I'm not blaming it on him, I mean, it's, you know, it's more architecture pleasing. I mean, it is for one thing, it provides a different type of lighting where
Focus lighting.
this is broadcasting over a space, that light may be able to hone in on a spot or whatever. But,
The main reason for my question was 560 projects. It's always possible with humans in the room that it just miss. That was the reason I wanted to bring it up. I don't have a problem with the project, just I got sure.
No,
We could go over, if
it's
we
not
could
this
go over
type
to
of
that
lighting.
other. Page 115, administrative services building, we're gonna do some paving. Totally separate, but they're here. We talked about this when we started the Nesbitt Discovery Academy, when we got to year 2. Have we got enough parking for students? Because it would seem to me if we don't, at a time when you're doing some paving, there would be then some striping and some things going on to make sure that we're gonna add another 100 students. And I just want to
Saw
make
that
sure that
somewhere as a separate item. I can't remember where I saw it.
It's P12.
there is something, well, I sure missed it. I apologize.
it's right below their P12 on the same page.
Yeah, on the same page.
So we are going to add,
But that's for the warehouse building, but that will encompass, actually be for whomever and whatever that's going on.
yeah,
Not
Here,
basically we'll be
not just-
shifting people around the building. They normally would park on this side, their new parking spot would be.
And so we anticipate that there will be enough parking for students in that kind of thing. Good. And I had, page 123, or excuse me, 122. K-3 classroom modification amount, $100,000. Is that seed money or modulars if we've got to get to that point in a year's time?
Modulars and or renovations to existing modulars to make them compatible, not so much compatible, but comparable
We've got to be equitable.
space. Yes, equitable space, that's a better word to use.
So my question then, the other places that I have marked, and I'll just throw this all the way out, there needs to go to discussion too. You indicated earlier 4%, which to me, when I did the math, was about $475,000 or so that was being put aside to deal with that as well. I look at the back and I see purchase, some not anywhere near what was requested, but I also see some additional requests and funding for purchasing of vehicles, trucks, work trucks, all those types of things. My concern is, being on the school capital funding commission, knowing where we are with funding there, If worst case scenario, 45, 41, 42, whatever it is, falls into this board's lap, we're gonna be one of two things. Having this conversation, the majority of this meeting's conversation a year from now being about that, I would think. My concern is if we put enough money aside without having to address it all at one time a year from now, and timing to take care of space, whether it be in existing buildings, or modulars, or some combination of both, would it make sense for this board to, not for anything that involves students, just that back section, and I don't know how much it is, I didn't total it up, but just that back section of vehicles for 1 year, to take that money and push it in with what you've also got set aside as seed money, startup money, planning money, whatever it is, and if we wind up not having to need it, it goes back to where it's been requested now for purchasing those things. Because the concern to me is everybody's talking about the human capital, and I get it. But nobody in Raleigh, nobody anywhere is talking about, and that's going to fall right here in our lap, to create the proper, adequate, equitable space for kids in those schools if we have to add that many teachers. So I throw that out there. If you look at us and honestly tell me you think we're okay with where we are in a year's time, even if we have to spend more of this money or some combination of things to try to get it done, but a year from now gives you enough time to get things ready by August, I'm good. But it seems to me like it's going to be a tougher thing to do.
The total vehicle amount is $251,500,
Well,
which,
there's several in there that with some totals, I think.
not the way I read it.
It's about 200.
251, adding that to it, does it help, does it make sense? Am I just a goofball for even asking? I don't care what the answer is, because you guys are the experts.
I think that's a great question, and I really think it leads in because we've not addressed, we really haven't addressed facility. That's been 10% addressed facility, 90%. You're absolutely right. But what we did do in anticipation of those 45 additional spaces that would be needed is we sent teams out to the schools that were impacted. And if you recall, the school in the county that was impacted the most that we projected for Glen Arden was 7 classrooms. But then there were, I think, STs was 6. It went down there. So I asked Mr. Huff to head up a team and include Mrs. Swanger to physically go out to the schools to look at physical space, what would be available in the event that the worst case scenario came. So I think this is a good opportunity to address this to the board.
And that's exactly what we did. At the same time, when we were doing this process, we were still waiting for legislation, what was going to change within HB 13. So we had probably 250 that we could have put in that K through 3, but not sure what was going to happen with that. And you heard Mr. Fearley say we went ahead and went as high as we could on that capital contingency, so that we had a little wiggle room to see what would be the decision. We've got enough for we can get at it immediately, and then toward next year, and as it turned out, and it turned out that we did it right. We put that flexibility in place that if we deplete that $100,000, we've taken that capital contingency as high as we possibly can. That if we're frugal with it, a lot of that will go to those needs. So we got some we can address in this first phase, because what we're coming to call this, the legislative decision. We've got enough there to address, to answer your question, this year, what our needs are going to be. And there is a little bit in that description too that also covers furnishings for that in that K3. And any smart boards, a piece of technology. If we didn't use it up, we would be able to get a little bit more on that technology need to really enhance those classrooms. So to answer your question fairly, yes, I think we hit it right about where we need to be based on the decision that came down. You want to elaborate?
Well, I just mirror what Joe said, based on our surveys of the schools that were most significantly impacted. We're in pretty good shape compared to most everyone else. I think our intermediate schools, they gave us capacity at the elementary schools. Those are the ones being impacted. So, we're on a good curve right there. We do have modulars that Clark really focused on that we can upfit, make equitable, and put the support services there so that we have, they're maybe using spaces in the school. So I'm not saying it's easy or tiny, but I agree with Joe. I think when we really looked at it, I think we've got the seed money here. Near the end of the year, we're going to protect that contingency and use it as needed to get up to speed. And then we will still have a couple of projects, I'm sure, that are not done yet, that we could borrow the money until the next year. We'll have capital outlay next year to look at too, to supplement, and then have the summer to upfit as needed. The legislation changes, so
Well,
I
that
think we're in good shape.
that's the second part of my question, which is, I understand we have the capital outlay money a year from now to talk about. I just want to make sure that we got enough time, because I almost don't even know how to say this. We might have an easier time if this was a problem that was impacting our high school, if we ran a week or two late, than if we were to be behind and run a week or two late with elementary kids.
I think that our plan is to do the work that is time consuming this summer. It's really not needed until next summer.
Because your infrastructure, I mean,
Moving some modulars around.
moving some modular, but you've got to get them up to speed. You've also got Lakeville, you've got the technology, you've got, some of those places are septic and wells.
We're already working on it.
You're already, I just want to make it clear, if you guys are good, I'm good, but that worries me to make sure we have the ability, worst case scenario, to have to meet that completely with no other outside funding, and we've got to figure out a way ourselves the timing of it. So thank you for the proactiveness and being ahead of the game. Thank you for that.
These visits to schools were definitely something we need to do, and we feel comfortable, the principals feel comfortable.
I'm good. That was all I had, Madam Chair.
Mr. Fairley, one other thing I noticed, and it was at Reynolds as well, but I'm sort of afraid that it may be across our system. But under M9, it's on page 4, M9, it talks about replace old fuse switchgear. And I know from experience at AB Tech in our English campus that we had old fuse switchgear. And it was a nightmare when it did eventually fail. It always got put on the back burner. And eventually when it did fail, it required bringing in, a lot of work, a lot of attention, backup generators, backup HVAC, et cetera. And when we talk about absolute necessity, you gotta have power. And if this is something that is out there and running on a Band-Aid, I'm surprised that we didn't fund that. I know it's high dollar. But how many schools do we have like that?
I'll defer to Clark, I think he's got a better answer on that.
So, this equipment is working properly. To put it in perspective, we had the same situation here at this office that we are currently engineering at this building, the facility. We had a breaker fail, couldn't fix it. So, that's why we're working on that. This could happen at any school, really, at any, obviously the age of this is why we have it in here. It could realistically last 20 more years, never have to be a problem, but when it fails, you can't find parts for it. So, this was one of the very last cuts we made, and with the hopes that it's going to hold together this year. I mean, and I say that not that I'm worried about it, because ink intermediate switchgear could blow up today. And it's just the nature of that equipment. When I say blow up, that's maybe too strong a word to use, but stop working. Word break, sorry. But, so we feel confident we've got more time, but it definitely needs to be replaced in the near future.
Would it be fair to say, in the past, with this booklet, there's been a page at the end that was, I'll call it the last cut, maybe the next 10 in line, that if some of these things come in under budget, we can move to number 1, number 2, number 3, and so forth. Would it be fair that something like this might be at or near the top of that list, should any of these projects come in at a point where there's some extra money?
That would be a great one for that, and it would have to be a summertime job due to killing power of the entire building while it's being replaced, so.
Typically, that list that you referred to was utilized if there was a windfall of the funding, not from surpluses from projects that were complete. And that's how, we do have that list. We're pretty confident this year there's not gonna be a windfall. But if the final number comes in higher, we would go to the last cut that and request your approval to do that.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Cindy's quiet, Max is thumbing through his book, so go ahead.
No.
Okay, Max is good. I think we're finished.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All that hard work.
It's up there. I'm always amazed. Always amazed. Break number 2 to be short-lived. Yeah, 5, 6, 7 minutes, however long it takes Mr. Fairley and Mr. Wyatt to get their ducks in a row.
We're set up, so whenever you're ready,
Okay.
we can.
Take a run and get right back. You don't have to get up?
Well, I'm not till like slide 600, so I'm gonna wait for
We put it, when we did intermediate, what you said to me made me think, we didn't use the same kind of, fuses and things in that school that we did at Reynolds, did we? You're shaking your head, yeah.
No, the technology has increased since Reynolds Middle.
Don't look at me and smile when you say that. Just because I drove my car into that. Yeah, okay, I got it. But what you're saying is the new stuff can blow just as readily as
It
the old.
can, it's just like your transformers you hang on the pole outside your home, so if you lose power, you can't control.
Right.
You know, it's a machine.
It's like when the
Our chiller failed just a little while ago. I noticed you were fanning yourself earlier.
You know, I was giving it
But
the
you're
good
not
old
now, because we
Baptist.
had it working
I was
again.
giving it the good old Baptist
Sure.
man. That always blowing away over here.
Uh-huh.
All right, yeah, so it blew, did it, or it malfunctioned?
Yes, it temporarily went on the way. Yeah, we
Right.
haven't run it yet.
Below is what you do for that.
All right, Mr. Fearley, I'm through being foolish.
Thank you.
But we do not have a.
You
Do.
should have this. This is this guy right here. It's the one that has tabs in it.
Right, okay, but we don't have a separate PowerPoint thing.
Basically, the PowerPoint is the front of that book, and then there's an appendix at the back that has even more fascinating information than what's presented in the front.
Okay, great, thank you.
So this report, different than capital outlay, takes a bigger picture, longer term view of Buncombe County schools. The previous presentation is what we're going to do next year. Immediate needs, smaller projects typically. Any projects that you'll see in the long-range plan at the end of this are required to be over $100,000, and some of them are way over. So this is going to be kind of the big picture, a snapshot of where we are in terms of our enrollment capacity in each school. And there are some very, very dense charts in here that are going to be difficult for you to read here that you'll want to take home and study. All I'm going to do is I'm going to show you them, orient you to them, and pull out some of the highlights. But next month, you will be asked to approve and accept this report. So you'll have a month to kind of work through it, ask questions, go through Dr. Baldwin if you would, and it can be modified. But okay, Mary Beth. The first part is membership, which is how many kids are at a school, average daily membership, and population trends in the districts. Then we'll look at an example to show you how capacity works, and that will be at Glenarden. We will look at building permits and development in the district, which is what we kind of monitor to help us make those projections up on the top there. And then we're going to look in tab 4 at a proposal for long-range planning projects that we see on the horizon, which we will request your approval of so that when the School Capital Fund Commission calls for a prioritized list of projects with budgets, that we will have a board-approved request to make to them. And then tab 5, we're not going to look at in this PowerPoint, but there's some backup information that may help you understand that. Questions anytime? Okay. So this chart here that we've prepared and presented for about the last 10 years, usually it is the chart that everything leads up to. I'm giving it to you up front, and then we're going to show you kind of how we came up to it. But to orient you, here's all our schools along here. Here is our current membership right here. And then we project membership out for 5 more years. You'll see the district-wide or system-wide schools down here that we more or less control membership there. So we've kind of carried through the membership. They can be changed by choice. These memberships, it's whoever shows up at the door, right? Then over here in these 3 columns, we look at capacity of schools in 3 different ways. And Mary Beth is going to talk about that in her example. But basically, our touchstone is functional capacity. DPI capacity is what we report to the state based on their calculator. And then theoretical common core capacity looks at a school with the concept that everything that can be a classroom is a classroom. So it mostly maxes out the capacity of schools. And then another factor is our core capacity. So if you have all these classrooms in a tiny cafeteria or abnormally small media center, it probably isn't functioning very well. So DPI has guidelines for the capacity of media, how to calculate capacity of media centers, the cafe and such. They also have guidelines for administrative areas, but it doesn't affect capacity. They have guidelines, and we do work on schools because they have substandard administrative areas, maybe no conference room and that sort of thing. But it doesn't really affect capacity. But the cafeteria is probably the biggest one. If they're having trouble feeding the kids and getting them through, we will hear about it. The media center has changed over the last 10 years because of technology being pushed out into schools. I feel like the DPI guidelines for media centers maybe haven't caught up, because we can make things work because we have computers on carts, we're going to one-to-one. Every portion of the school kind of becomes a function of the media center. So we use a color coding system to give you a graphic look at kind of green is, hey, we're good. Yellow is kind of caution. We're within 25 of our functional capacity. That we're saying that's kind of one classroom. Of course, it varies, not depending on the level. The orange is that we're kind of more than our functional capacity, but more than our functional, but we're less than the theoretical capacity. We're using coping mechanisms out in the school to accommodate the number of kids we have. That could be modulars. It could be putting kids on a cart or students on teachers on carts and moving around. They don't get a dedicated room. They move from room to room. Our folks are very creative, and they will make it work. And then if we're in the red zone, boy, we got a real concern. So we apply that same theory or that same presentation to the core capacity, and you only see 2 schools kind of in the yellow zone. Estes, the cafeteria is small, but it's really a function of the arrangement of the cafeteria. There's columns and such, and they can spread out, and they do fine. It really isn't, while it doesn't really meet the DPI calculator, it does function fairly well. So it isn't a red zone kind of, or even an orange zone concern, but it is a concern there. At T.C. Robertson, the media centers typically has shown up, and again, because we're able to push that technology out into the school, it really hasn't been a source of complaint from the schools. And then finally, the utilization rate is a ratio of the functional capacity to the number of students. And a lot of school systems throughout the state use that, look at it, and a few years ago we added that on. 90% utilization rate seems to be a comfortable zone. You're really efficient, but you're not overcrowded. You start to get above 90, and you're using coping mechanisms. So we have a few schools that are in that, they're using coping mechanisms. They may be modulars that are functioning just fine, so they're not complaining, but that's just a heads up to us that that they're in a zone of concern, as is the yellow. They're just above 90%. So over here, you see we're in pretty good shape. In my time here, we usually had some red, a lot more orange. And I was telling Dr. Baldwin when I started here, North Buncombe was a real concern, and North Windy Ridge got built to take care of that. And over the years, North Buncombe, that really helped there. And now North Buncombe, in a 16-year swing, is starting to, we haven't done much there. We haven't added much. We haven't done, and the population is growing. So we're starting to get into, kind of starting over.
So Cane Creek shows up in both the Rounds and Robertson District, which of course it should.
It does.
Presumably it doesn't.
But it's not double
in the
counted.
totals. Okay.
Yeah, we
Okay.
take it away. We couldn't decide which one to put it in, so we put it in both. But we do subtract it from the total. I'm going to enlarge this here on the next slide, Mary Beth, and point out a couple of things. Here's some terms that we use, and I hope we're all familiar with them, but cohort advancement is moving kids from first grade to second grade, and a lot of the scenarios of capacity or projected membership just move the kids, the number of kids in the school from second grade to third grade, and you go on. It's a good, easy guess. What we've seen in that, and why we project our own system, is that we've calculated, monitored, documented the cohort advancement rate at every school, at every level, for at least the last 15 years. And we can look at that, and there's trends. Some schools are 105% from this grade to that grade. And so the same grade level at another school may be 90%. So that helps us project if we plug in those advancement rates at each school, and we can look at all the kindergartens. That's the hardest one because you don't know how many kindergarten kids. You can say last year is the same number, but you'll see at Glen Arden when Mary Beth talks about it, you get some anomaly grades. You get a few kindergartens this year, and the next year you'll get a whole lot. So that's probably the biggest variable that's difficult to predict. And then the charter schools and kids leaving has been recently the most challenging thing to predict how many kids will be in each school, each grade level. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But what I wanted to show you is we try to kind of triangulate capacity, membership. We look at it from a couple of different points of view to make our best guess and understanding. And that's what this is kind of showing. We do show a trend. This is a Buncombe County Schools predictions of where we'll be in the next few years, and we do show a trend down. DPI makes simultaneous projections and every year updates them, and you can see where they are. Their trend in the next slide will show that for Buncombe County Schools and the neighboring counties. They show a significant drop. I can't tell you exactly what their metric is or the way they do it. I know they look at births and deaths. They look at trends, but beyond that I'm not sure. In Buncombe County, typically our deaths outpace our births. So if you're relying on that as a significant predictor, it's probably not a good one because a lot of people move in. And that's been the story of Buncombe County for many years. So we have this here's this year. That's what we actually have. DPI last year projected that many. So they weren't too far off, 150 or so off. DPI next year is predicting that, we're predicting this. And if you just advance the kids, take the same number of kids we had last year, and moved them on through the system, the same number of kindergartners, that's what the number would look like. After going through our rubric, we ended up here, which falls kind of in between the two. And then, as Dr. Baldwin always reminds me, this is crystal ball stuff, right? Out here, it is really hard. 1 year is difficult, 2 years is really difficult, and then beyond that, it's really, there's a lot of factors that can creep up. Okay. So DPI, like I said, they predict across the state for every school system, and you can see what they're predicting for Buncombe County. You can see the neighboring counties exactly the same for public schools. And then next slide. More neighboring counties. The only one, Asheville City, they're predicting in this area to go up. We'll see how that goes. Okay. So this is a kind of a quick comparison, again, trying to glean information from these massive charts and get it down to somewhere that we can start analyzing and understanding. We look at each district and each school and see what the ADM is last year versus this year. And here's our Robertson district gain. Our lowest loss was in the our highest loss, I should say, is in the Irwin district, and you can examine this and see exactly where that happened. We've got some things, we'll show you some trends a little bit later, but those are the hard numbers last year versus this year, school-wide and district-wide. We use, by the way, the best one of two every year so that we have a kind of a consistent comparison. Of course, the best one of two is what DPI outputs. They give it to us in February or March, but it takes the highest number of students in the first or second month and uses that as your ADM. So that's our touchstone.
Tim, recognize it's not, I wouldn't say it's a real significant factor, but do understand that Discovery Academy is still in that phase.
Yeah,
where they're
it's
increasing
taking
by
students
100
from those other schools.
other
So
high schools.
there's a 100 student loss each year that we don't lose them from the system, but they're going to Discovery Academy in the high schools. Good point. Okay. Another way of slicing and dicing the information here, and we've color-coded all our schools. This breaks it down by the grade level and shows us the change from last year, winners and losers, if you will. And we've color-coded just the ones that have the highest number of lost students and the highest gain in students to help you see where that is and draw conclusions as you see the information. Okay. I pulled out the Robertson district because there's kind of consistent gains there to kind of highlight this. And you can see, and if you recall, there was a redrawing of attendance lines because Avery's Creek was really pushing it. And there are, just today, I got another planning and zoning approval for another significant development that Avery's Creek would be the attendance for. In fact, I got Avery's Creek, there's 3 different developments came in just today, approved by planning and zoning, not to the building permit stage, but Glenarden, as was mentioned earlier, will be the subject of Mary Beth's look at capacity. You can see they gained students, as did Estes, they gained 10. Some of that can be attributed to that redrawing of attendance line and allowing students to have a discretionary release to the school that they're already in. We've been liberal with that so that they weren't forced to move if they were in that zone that changed school. Some did, some didn't, but it did what you wanted it to. We moved some kids from Glenarden and to Avery's Creek and eased a little bit on Avery, or I'm sorry, to Estes and Glenarden and eased Avery's Creek a little bit.
If you back up on the slide, I just want to clarify for my fellow board members in the audience. when you look at that, here's Inca, it's all in the large loss category. There's not been a massive migration out of Inca, Cameron. That's
It's 'cause of that,
That's
right?
the effect of the MDU still.
631, that gain, wow, big gain.
Big gain right there, right?
At the expense of the rest of the.
Big orange block there, and I just want to make sure everybody saw it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, next one. This, apologize, did not show up exactly like this. We cut off the top bit when we printed it in your book. So we will republish this for you for your June meeting. But this is, we lost Asheville High down, I think we lost down to Ira Jones in the city. We just cut that off for some reason in the printer. But you can see kind of the non-Buncombe County schools in the region, what their attendance is, and their gains or losses. We'll point out that these two, the virtual schools, these are statewide numbers. You can see that they've increased a fair bit. And some further charts, you'll see where our kids are going there. But that is a statewide number. Okay. So now we're taking all that information you've seen and we're putting it in maybe a more digestible format to help you understand what's going on. We do track where students go when they transfer out of Buncombe County schools. Basically do that by records request. The students' parents request their records be transferred to here, there, and we document that, and that's what helps us build this. You can see that homeschools is the largest in Buncombe County, and Dr. Baldwin pointed out a couple of years ago that that's pretty traditional for Buncombe County, right? That this is the highest.
Well, I think for Western North Carolina, we had a report that was presented to all the superintendents about 3 years ago, and we sort of hovered from year to year between being the second, from a percentage standpoint, the second largest area in the state for homeschool and third largest. I can't remember, it's either Research Triangle or Guilford that had the largest.
And they probably have a lot more students, right? They got
Well, I think
a lot
it's
more
mountain culture
students.
too.
But percentage-wise, this is pretty high in
Yeah.
Buncombe County.
So actual city schools is not on there. Is there a reason? Because they're really our largest destination, are they not?
I am not sure. Amanda, can you help me with that? Will we see that? I'm not sure of the answer to that, and I can get you that. That's exactly the kind of things I need you to point out, and I will get you that,
Okay.
that information.
Presumably they would be the top bar.
I think we will see it. We're going to see it in later slides,
Okay.
but it may not have a total number.
Okay.
So we'll fix that, okay? I think this in the next couple of slides is very interesting and starting to really draw conclusions. I think it's consistent from previous years that here's where we lose most of our kids, 6th grade. And this little blip at 3rd grade is very common too. We gain typically at 9th grade. These are just transfers, so it's not gains. We're not showing you the gains that are the opposite story. But I think that's pretty telling.
So this does include the actual city
It
schools
does,
numbers?
yes. Okay. And another difficult to read, but it's more legible in your book. But you can see in here where, from what school of ours to what school outside of Buncombe County schools, and the quantity of, where the kids went. I think discretionary releases would be where you're going to see Asheville City Schools primarily, too. That's going to be another way. So it sums it up. Here's city transfers right here, 84. See that? To the city, homeschool, parochial or private schools, and charter schools. And then in this category, it shows you which charter schools. So we've highlighted again the schools with the highest transfers out. Doesn't necessarily mean those are the schools with the highest, the largest decrease in ADM, because they may have high transfers in. Okay, next slide. Destination by grade level for the various other schools other than city schools. And again, you see pretty consistent sixth grade. It's,
Really in that whole middle school pattern, you know, it spikes at 6, but it's, you know, especially if you look at charter. And I think if you don't go back to that next slide, but if you take a look at the transfers out, you know, to me, there's potential patterns. We don't know for sure until we really, really dig and almost go application by application, but you're seeing a pattern of proximity to other choices.
That's true, yeah.
You know, whether it could be Evelyn Intermediate that's near the West Asheville National City, whether it be in the Inca district where the two,
Franklin and that.
not the newest, but
We haven't mapped that. It'll be, maybe next year
yeah,
we'll be able to map that.
but it just looks like a potential pattern.
How close you are, yeah. Okay, next slide. So the other side of the coin is transfers into Buncombe County. So Buncombe County schools, you saw Robertson had kind of the highest transfers out, well, they got the highest transfers in as well. High schools, at ninth grade, we get a lot of kids back. A lot of kids come back into the system.
Is that for
Estes.
athletics, you think,
Or extracurriculars, not only, but it could be
Music.
band, it could be chorus drama, because of the, I do think it's extracurriculars is again one of those real potential patterns.
And there really haven't been that many high school alternatives as there is at elementary.
Some of the, and I'll just throw it out, having been on the board at High School Athletic Association, another sort of potential pattern to watch is the athletics at the private school. Because we continue to hear increased, not in any great number, but students that are being legally recruited by private schools for academic and athletic purposes. It's all legal, but that's a factor, especially as you get closer to the high school.
Okay. Discretionary admissions and releases are releases and admissions for public schools, within public schools. So charter schools aren't going to, or charter schools are public schools, but they are not counted in this. So if a kid from Buncombe County Schools wants to go to Asheville City Schools, they fill out a form, request release, and it has to be accepted by both ends of the spectrum. So,
Kim, I hate to keep interrupting, but I think it's important, it gives an opportunity for the board to hear. We've talked to the principals and requested that they look at these as a district, because what we found happening is that there could be a family that's requesting to go from one district to another, and they have multiple students within that district. So one may be at the primary, one may be at the middle school, one may be at the high school. So we've asked them to look at developing a timeline that will go out to the community that extends that and gives us a little better time to look at it as a whole picture in the district. Because what I think was happening is one principal would make a decision about that child at the middle school, and then it could be a couple of weeks later that the elementary principal may make a different decision. So we want to try to be more consistent with that and look at it as district principals.
okay. So there's the number of students admitted. There's your top three: Estes, Glen Arden, and West Buncombe. And at the elementary level, what was explained to me, and it makes sense, is there's a lot of teachers that may live here and work over here, and they want their kid in the school. So there's a lot of movement in the school that they're at. Okay,
And
next
remember,
slide.
this could be within the system. Case in point, I remember one year where we had a number of students from North Buncombe Elementary that opted to requested transfer to Weaverville Elementary School. So, you know, we have that, and it can vary from one year to the next where that
in
happens.
the district, yeah.
This is not going to be better, even to go to afternoon school.
It could be within the district or to the city schools, yeah. Okay, next one. So those are your top 4 of students released. But again, they could be within the system. And then this just compares the change in membership due to discretionary admissions and release with the top gainers shown and, okay, next slide. And the top reductions, Owen High and Williams. But again, it does not necessarily say that their ADM well, it's Oakley was down 47. This is just kind of inside of the district movement, or public schools, city schools. Okay. So again, we pull out, these were those schools that had either caution, concern in that first slide. So we're saying, okay, those guys were our ones with concern as far as capacity versus membership. And so this pulls out for you a look at those so that you can see where there may or may not be issues. Avery's Creek, hey, it worked. We were able to move kids out because it was really pushing it at Avery's Creek. They did move, and therefore Glenarden, Estes isn't on that list, but Glenarden and Estes had gains because of that, at least a portion of those gains. Okay. So that's kind of the membership and population trends. Mary Beth's going to do a little example to show you how capacity works, because most folks think that capacity of a school can only change if you do an addition or you demolish something. That's absolutely not the case. It's a function of the use of that school, because different classrooms, different types of classrooms and spaces have different capacities per DPI. If you like, or you.
Great. Okay. So we'll look at the history of Glenarden for a moment. It was constructed in 1971 as an open plan school. And then in 1991, we added a special education edition with 4 classrooms that are specific for kids with special needs. And then in 2001, a 14-classroom addition was made to accommodate kindergarten and first grade. And at the same time, some dividers were put into the open plans part. They're not completely divided, but it makes separate classrooms out of the old school. And then over the years, to bridge all the different needs, modular classrooms were added. And so there's 7 buildings for that right now at Glenarden. So the next slide is how Glenarden is being used this year, because schools change a little bit every year. So the yellow, in this case, are core classrooms. And here are the kindergarten classrooms, first and second grade classrooms through here, third grade classrooms, and there's only 3 fourth grade classrooms. Now that this year, there's 5 second grades, 4 first grades, and 6 kindergartens. So she gained 2 kindergarten classrooms this year over last year, and why, we don't quite know. Then this is how we interact with the DPI calculator. So this year we have 20 K-3 classes, and they're counted at 21 children per classroom by DPI. And 3 fourth grade classrooms are counted as 26. Then they just look at these different classes in orange that I'll call resource. They're pull-out classes that are for really important student support functions like enrichment and counseling and English as a second language, as well as tutoring, and then special resources. Speech and hearing is in the modular, and occupational therapy, physical therapy. And there's other ones that aren't even shown here, like psychology testing and other locally and federally funded positions that, so self-contained that's this part, gets a capacity of 10 per room by DPI, but resource doesn't get any capacity. So these orange functions are taking up space in our school. So then next year that might change. And the way that we like to think about function, this is the theoretical function, this is how it's being used, but we don't find that modulars are completely equitable. We can provide the equitable functions like, heating and air and technology, but it's not the same thing as being in a regular classroom. So we like to think about what if we didn't have these modulars and we had art inside of the building, music and computer labs. So if we subtract those out of our theoretical capacity, it goes from 538 to 475.
So we're subtracting out the computer labs, even though we have the one-to-ones because they make STEM labs.
Yeah, so that's a change that's happening this year. So, so the next slide, well, this just talks about how the variables of capacity change each year, and one of those is the reassignment of classroom space to non-regular curriculum, and changing from an elementary classroom to a different grade. Remember, I showed that kindergarten has a capacity of 21, or as well as third grade. Well, if a third grade turns into a fourth grade, that's a 26 student capacity. So we've gained 5 in capacity just in that one classroom, but it's the same building. And then in some cases we demolish a part of the school, but usually we add on, so that also changes capacity. So let's say something happened, and we had to find a space for 7 or 8 more classes. What would we do? So first, we would take those really important support functions for the kids and move them out. And then we would put those additional classrooms in. So we actually fit them, right? But we still really need all of these. There's a couple other places we can squeeze them in. And then we start to double up and bring in 2 classroom modular. Now, these are smaller functions, but still, what if you need AIG at the same time as you need curriculum? But we actually can, at this school, possibly accommodate an extra 8 classes only by moving in 1 module. But in this case, we have one that needs to move from community high, and it could be put there if required. And that's, do you have any questions about that? That's the end of my part.
So, I think I'm right on this, but help me if I'm not. Basically, when you're talking about the functional capacity of the building, what we need to, for our purposes, in my own mind, functional capacity is the capacity of brick and mortar
Yes.
part of the school.
And to answer the question, like, here's the STEM lab, we're turning a computer lab into a STEM lab, and the other computer lab is totally gone. We've moved music into it, and whereas this is where music is currently, it's taking up 2 rooms, so we're making more efficient use, even though it's good to have that space, there's a lot of equipment that goes with that. And so we do have 2 regular classrooms out of modulars if we had to add 8 classes.
And we have policy that addresses at what point, in terms of numbers of modulars, that from a board's perspective, it's time to build brick and mortar, correct?
You do. Policy 9020 defines the construction criteria, safety down to athletics, and addresses
The number.
when you will build. Well, the policy as it is says that we will build in 4 classroom increments when appropriate. And I believe the thinking behind that is just because you're 1 classroom short, it probably doesn't make sense to build a classroom. It's very expensive to build a tiny addition, and that may be a short-term trend. So the 4 classrooms that you referenced it's kind of proven out over time that there's an issue there. And then that's a more efficient cost per square foot sort of addition to do than a single bricks and mortar classroom. Okay. So in order to do that original slide, we factor in what's happening in the community that I don't believe DPI does. So it helps us to be, have kind of a local perspective on those projections, okay? So permits and development, we get, like I said today, I got in my box from the county 2 more big projects. And I will tell you, okay, Mary Beth, next one. Just like we use the best one of 2 for comparison purposes every year, so we have a good kind of basis, we look at building permits from January 1st to January 1st. So if a project was permitted after January 1st of this year, it's not going to show up in our report here. But that way it'll be consistent each year. If a project was simply permitted through planning and zoning, but not building permit, that won't show up either. When we had our recession, there were a lot of projects that were permitted, planning and zoning, but never went to the building permit stage. When it gets to the building permit stage, it's pretty sure it's going to happen.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So, if these are all approved, and it was like a large bulk or in like Robertson District, like you
Yes.
said, would we have to look at potentially redistricting the Robertson District?
That is one option for you. You know, you have facilities options, you build, you bring in modulars, you renovate buildings. That's a facility solution. And then there's administrative solutions. You redrew attendance lines for the elementary schools in that district. That's an option that is up to the board to redraw district lines.
But we also don't know, just because a project is going in, how many families will be there.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you said that because the project that's going in right next to Robertson High School, that developer shared with me the profile of their typical apartment projects. And it was pretty eye-opening who is there. A lot of them are, instead of buying a second home in Asheville, people are buying apartments. And it's, you know, lock and go, and they have month to month, they can go to Phoenix if they decide in 2 years, you know, whatever. So that's what they're reacting to, is Asheville is hot for visiting. And a lot of those apartments are, like I said, second homes, if you will. The profile isn't the same. You know, I expected to see kind of young couples starting off, and then when they have kids, they move to a house. That isn't necessarily true. There's retired people. It's really hard to predict how many kids are coming out of a high-end development, probably second, third home people. That's what happened in the Owen district for years. The development was really high-end, and it didn't prove out, you know, houses on the edge of the hill, you know, really expensive and such. So I don't know how to predict how many kids come out of each development. So it's just a guideline.
You do have that crystal ball in your office.
Yeah, I rub that thing, but it doesn't speak very well. So again, we've highlighted, we pulled out, when we look at the permits, kind of where they're showing up. And we compare it to last year too, so you can kind of see trends. The market in Asheville is pretty heated. So this year there's quite a few permits, but there were last year too.
Is your multi-family building permit, so if I'm going, I pull a permit to put in 20 apartments, is the count 20?
That's another good point. You stole my thunder, but I'll forgive you, because there's another slide. Because a permit could be a house. It could be 100 units, apartments. So this only tells part of the story. You're exactly right. And there's another slide that starts to get into that. Okay, next one. So here's our permits that we reported, and we're reporting them by the elementary school. We've mapped them and then say, hey, that their attendance area would be this, that, or the other school. And then out here, we pull out in each district how many permits. And then these highlights here hit the point that you just made, Mr. Bryant, in North Buncombe, 330 permits by January, last January, but it's really 497 units. So it's pretty significant. 313 permits in Anchor, look at that, 1,128 units. So it's, you can't just look at the permits, in other words, the number of units. Then, what's the character of the units and how many kids will come out? That's what's really difficult. But at least it shows us a trend, and when we're projecting, if there's a lot of permits and a lot of things, we might bump that a little bit. If there isn't that many in this area, then we'll kind of hold on that and rely more on the historical numbers that are right there. Okay? So this is the final tab. This is long-range planning. We're not going to look at the appendix in this, but okay, go to the next slide. Long-range planning, we pull out projects that requests and such that are more appropriate for long-range planning out of the capital outlay process that you just saw. So you'll see in your book a lot of refer to long-range plan. The committee has said that may be a good request, but we cannot fund it in this. It will blow the budget, or I'd like a new gym. It would swamp the capital outlay budget. So we kind of collect those each year, evaluate them, and they go into this long-range plan if they're appropriate. And it's funded by Article 39 sales tax. So that's the fund that is now, Mr. Bryant served on the School Capital Fund Committee as your
It
representative.
represents us very well.
He did. Very, very
But not
good job.
fast
All
too.
volunteers, or
You'll see the fruits of his labor in another slide here. Yeah, sure. So Article 39, these are the first round of funded projects, and they call them 2017 fund. That's their terminology based on documents that the city and Buncombe County Schools gave on their first call for funding. These are the projects that were funded months ago and that we're working on right now. We're taking bids on several of these projects right now, and we'll implement them over the summer and the fall. Okay, next one. Then the next round of funding that was approved, and I apologize, they funded $10 million. Fabulous. Helped us hit a lot of our significant needs of high dollar projects that were difficult for the regular capital outlay committee to fund. There's roofing, there's construction projects, there's boilers, chillers, gym bleacher replacements, a lot of kind of high dollar items. Next item, the next slide. And then this is the last round of funding that the School Capital Fund Commission recommended to the commissioners, and the commissioners have approved, but the funding will not be available till approximately December 1st. So we're holding off on these, but we'll get started on those when the funding comes available. So there will be another call for what's your next set of projects. And next slide. And so working with our folks, last year you approved the long-range plan. Projects that weren't funded have made their way here. We're looking for next month approval of this plan so that, like I said, when the School Capital Fund Commission calls on us, we will be prepared with a prioritized list. We have divided the long-range plan projects up in these various categories, and the staff recommendation is to take a bite out of each of these categories each year so that we don't get behind at deferred maintenance. then paving or roofing becomes twice the cost of what it was because you didn't address it in time. So thanks to Clark and his folks, and we developed this list that you will see in detail specific projects with specific amounts in the appendix. But here we're showing you the yearly totals. So the first year, the next year they ask, I don't know what they're going to term that, I guess 2020. But whenever that call comes out, we would be requesting approximately $12 million. The folks at the county that kind of manage this, they said there'll be probably about 11. They're really not committal, but I tried to sculpt this with our priority list so that it somewhat matched the available funding. Now that funding will be divided between Buncombe County Schools and Asheville City, and we cannot predict what that percentage or the division will be. They will make decisions based on priorities as they see them. But we're going to be asking for, if you approve this, $11.9 million in year one, and then we would assume that those projects that don't get funded would kick into year 2, 3, because I doubt they will fund everything in there, but I didn't want to under-ask.
So for our new board members, it used to be that it was divided up between the county and the city based on ADM.
Strictly based on ADM.
And now it's based on the pleasure of that county.
That's the key takeaway from that. And so they're not tied by ADM, it's by need, basically.
Well, and with that, the ADM part is accurate, but the control of the 84, 85% of the ADM monies for Article 39 didn't go, there was no school capital proclamation. That took place in these meetings. And now we don't.
We can only request.
On the request, and I've been on this board now for a long time. What's the word?
Long time.
Long time, 11 years. To me, this change has been the biggest change that I think we all have to have our eyes and our radar on moving forward, because I'm really proud of what previous boards, previous board members, previous staff, current staff have done in the way of facilities in Buncombe County Schools. You don't have to travel far around and go into some different schools and see where we are. And it wouldn't take but one catastrophe, 1 or 2 years of some numbers getting pushed down, where 4 or 5 years down the road, 6 years, we can have some real problems. So I just think we all, not just me now being on the commission representative, but all of us need to pay close attention to this and have it be a part of our radar as we move forward.
In terms of paying close attention, I'm interested in attending one of those meetings where this gets discussed and decided, so if you could let us know when that date is.
It will be in the fall. We moved, based upon some logistics things that were going on, we actually took some funding that was, not some funding and some requests that were going to come this year and the next year, brought them forward and approved some things, so we now have a gap, and we're not going to meet until the fall, but I'll let you know.
Thank you.
It also has kind of a ripple effect into the capital outlay process with the principals, because in the past, if they kicked something to long-range plan and thought it was high priority, and you thought it was high priority, it had a more assured chance of being funded. So now when the capital outlay committee considered this year, hey, kick that to the long-range plan, we had a couple of projects that, if you think this is really important and it really has got to be funded, you better keep it in that budget. Because this budget, it's...
It impacts the lottery funds too, which fall into the 40/42.
Yeah. That's our other option, is lottery funding. And we've held that for special projects, for shortfalls, where we have a critical project and they decided not to fund it, we have at least another option. Okay.
And we're fortunate in that across this state, a lot of those lottery funds are being used, the majority, for debt service.
Right.
And we're in a very fortunate situation that that's been picked up through 39 and the alternate resource. Yeah.
So this is a listing in the appendix. Again, you will see each project with a dollar amount associated. But this is basically a prioritized listing under each of these categories for the year 1 to 5 of projects. And basically, we would hit each one, and if we don't get funded, we would go from the bottom in each category and take something away to match the available funding they determine. So you can see the extent of the projects. And
So they're organized by priority?
their priority within
Within
the
each
category.
Okay.
That's the top paving project, that's the top roofing. And we would basically work our way through that by category to make sure we don't have a deferred maintenance situation. If you don't pave in time, how could paving ever become a priority? You can always, defer it. But if you defer it too long, the cost will double or triple, because not only do you have to take the asphalt down, you gotta take all the stone base down. Some places can be 8, 12 inches deep, compact it and bring it back. Whereas if you get to it on time, it's a pretty simple project. So that's the staff recommendation to you, that to avoid deferred maintenance and higher costs for things that you just simply need to keep up with, and are recurring. Roofing and paving, they're recurring. We're on about a 27-year cycle for roofing. It's kind of our thought process. Okay?
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
With Article 39 money, which is lottery money, right?
No,
No.
that's this school capital fund,
Oh.
Article 39, lottery separate.
Okay. With lottery money,
Mhm.
are there specific criteria designated as to how you can use that money?
Yes, there are. There's restrictions on that, and it has to be approved by the board, and it has to be approved by the county commissioners before it gets to NCDPI to access that money. So you cannot use that money for lottery. You cannot use it for administration or other reasons. It has to be directly in the school.
I got you, okay. That-
And even within the school, there are
Can't use
stipulations
it
about
for
that as well.
technology.
Thank you.
Okay?
It's not like the commercial setting.
Okay. Next slide. Oh, it's okay, 6 to 10 years. So we do have that 1 to 5 year plan. This is 6 to 10, and while we have attached dollar amounts, again, it's that crystal ball. We know these are on our list. This is our to-do list. Projects will move up or down in priority, but we know as our boilers, chillers, roofs, and such age, they're gonna need to be addressed. Fire alarms, the things like that. You can't get parts for them after a certain time. And Clark is pretty good at replacing this fire alarm in this school and then salvaging those parts and keeping this school going. But at some point, you need to replace things. So this is just kind of our to-do list. It's out there. It's not as highly scrutinized, but it keeps a good reminder of where we're going, and the needs never really end.
This is getting down in the weeds, but Hawk Creek interior renovations
Yeah.
to convert to open plan, they are an open plan.
You're right.
Okay.
That's a good
I
catch.
don't want them to
From-
open.
yeah,
They don't either. Can we just shut them down? like that?
Or that's what that does. They
Okay.
have bookshelves for
Right.
wall dividers
Yes.
and stuff.
Oh, I know.
And that's the intention of that,
So,
but it involves ceilings and HVAC systems and fire alarms and lighting and, it's
I
pretty
just want to make
involved.
sure we weren't making them more of an open plan, because while that might be nice on HGTV, it's not so.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Okay? So we're going to show you 3 projects before we conclude here. The first one is kind of an update on where we are in energy conservation, because that is really important. We're going to just briefly update you on Community High and the Zeugner Pool project. Clark and Alicia are going to do the little presentation on energy conservation. Alicia is our energy manager.
She's the one that sends us those emails and tells us how we're doing.
And turn your lights off, conserve energy.
We have stickers on it.
Stick your
You
lady.
have a pointer?
This is great.
Okay, thank you.
And then you just hit the down button to advance.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Sure.
Get out the road.
Sure.
Here you go.
There are only 3 slides, and we keep it brief. Thank you to Tim for inviting me, well, Clark and I, to come and talk about energy conservation. At the end of this fiscal year, the plan is to create an energy management plan for the district, which would be our first one ever. So I appreciate the opportunity, and with that said, though, at the end of the year and moving into the next fiscal year, we'll have a plan that will lay out our benchmarks, what we plan to do, where we're at. So this is sort of just a historical highlight of what we've done, and a lot of this happened well before I was here, so Mark may need to chime in here and there for historical purposes. But needless to say, so this bulleted list starts from the top, current, and moves down to the past. And I'm sure all of you are aware of the countywide LED initiative. We got started just a couple of weeks ago. We finished most of our maintenance building, and we're working over at Irwin High. There are a lot of big numbers involved with that, but it's estimated to save about $911,000 between mostly energy costs, but then a small chunk of that, about $55,000, has to do with maintenance savings. And that's simply, we won't be changing fluorescent bulbs every day. We won't be changing ballasts. We won't have staff time attributed to doing those things. So it really does add up. Since 2009, we've received about $1.6 million from Duke Energy and rebates, and a lot of that goes towards lighting projects that we've implemented. But part of that as well, we've changed out HVAC equipment, we've conducted audits. There's a multitude of projects where we've received funding, but about $1 million, I think about $1 million of that has just been in the last 6 months. So as we've amped up and implemented this district-wide LED work, a lot of money is coming back to the district in terms of rebates. Back in 2013, we certified, Energy Star certified 37 of our buildings. We will probably do that again soon. The recommendation is usually every 3 years, but there is a cost associated with going through that process. So it's just not something we're going to do every year. We have 2 LEED certified schools, Evelyn and Coots Intermediate. I think it was 2010 and 12, we've done from T12 to T8 fluorescent lighting upgrades. We've converted T8 to T5 in some of our competitive gyms. We've reduced water meter sizes. We've converted all of our parking lot lights to LED, flush valves, ballasts. It goes on and on. This is just sort of a general list of what's happened in really, I don't know, the last 17 years or so. Our facilities department is doing a great job keeping our roofs updated and making those more energy efficient. And way back to the dinosaurs, I mean, really, Buncombe County Schools has been very progressive in terms of energy management. We've had an energy conservation policy since the early 90s, which I think is pretty unheard of. It's pretty amazing. And since that time as well, we have multiple energy management systems that control set points in our buildings, when the equipment's running. We can trend and monitor what's happening, and it really keeps a tight schedule and control on the amount of energy we use and therefore the amount of money we spend. Next slide.
Go ahead. Okay, so you said we're going to, at the end of this year, have our first energy management plan. How is that different from an energy conservation policy? I guess one is a policy and one is a plan, aren't they?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Policy will help us create a plan.
Yes.
So what kinds of things will be in an energy management plan?
Well, a large majority of it will be, because we're looking at a 20% reduction, and a pretty significant chunk of that is going to be our LED project. But, I mean, just in the last 6 months, we've changed out a chiller, a boiler. We're going into all of our energy management systems and tightening our schedules. So anywhere where we can cut and save energy and save money, we're looking into all of this.
So it'll allow us then to be more proactive rather than reactive as we kind of have been with opportunities in the past?
Exactly, yes,
Well, and I
yes.
think it's kind of like a long-range plan, so we obviously have done a lot over time. It will make us more focused. And one thing with reactivity to energy management with our current is technology. Advancements, LEDs, for example, 6-8 months ago, did not make financial sense. All of a sudden, it makes financial sense. So that's, that will continue probably. It's just like buying a LCD TV, when they first came out, they were super expensive, and then all of a sudden they're affordable now. So that's an ongoing process, but I think Alicia's guidance, the focus will be there to guide us.
We won't be able to plan everything, is what I'm hearing you say. We need to be
Right.
able to take advantage of opportunities as they arise.
Yes,
they
yes,
will.
and it will
Law
be an
changes.
annual
Yeah.
plan too. Technology changes, goals change, we add schools, there's a lot of moving parts. So, what I like to do is use this fiscal year as our, because we're kind of where, with Anka on board, we're gonna have a good idea of what our energy usage and costs are. So, it'll take some time. We'll need to capture all that data a month or two after the fiscal year ends, but we should be rolling that plan out, I guess, maybe September-ish, I would guess.
Of those 37 Energy Star certified schools, we have 2 LEED certified. Am I correct in my assumption that the 2 LEED certified are not included in the count of the 37?
Correct.
So we have a total of 39 that are either Energy Star or LEED,
Yes,
correct?
Correct.
We have
exactly.
43 total facilities or buildings we have to care for.
So that was prior to any intermediate.
Yeah.
STEM, that doesn't include Discovery. So there are, basically our only building that was not Energy Star rated was Community High. It met the requirements. The engineer would not certify it because we had window units in the windows. He would not put a stamp on it.
Because that's where I was going. What are the facilities that are not at least meeting Energy Star certified?
I have a list off the top of my head, I honestly can't remember, but at the time,
It was just Community High.
Community High,
Well-
and we're in the process of replacing
I was
that.
gonna say,
Yes.
would Evelyn and Coombs be on that list?
Well,
Because
Evelyn
this
Coots,
happened
no,
before.
Evelyn Coots were not Energy
So-
Star because they're lead. We didn't
Yeah.
go after Energy Star for them.
Okay. But, again, I just want to make sure, and I'm sure you guys, I know you guys, you've harvested the low-hanging fruit. And I guess for return on investment, some of these older buildings that are out there, it just doesn't make good use of your funds to try to upgrade to get them to a certified or
Well, and it's,
status.
when you talk about low-hanging fruit, so the fruit tree, and when you climb to the top, because we were climbing to the top, that's why we were searching for different projects like the wall packs that we changed, area lighting. That's not the biggest bang for your buck, but there was really nothing there that made financial sense. Then all of a sudden, LEDs, the fruit started growing, on the bottom tree, so we can jump down the ground and start climbing back up. That's what we're doing right now.
That's good.
I mean, so that's going to be a never-ending battle we face. That's, it is what it is.
Technology,
Yeah,
good.
it is.
And if you go to the next slide,
Well,
it ties in,
Wait, we have
and
another
feel free to
question
jump
on that.
in.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The $911,000 in energy savings is a one-time or recurring?
That will be every year. Once all of the schools are done, that's every year.
So, and another way to look at that, so I know where you're going with this.
This is a country boy.
Number
a
one,
country
this
girl.
is when all of the lights are complete. This is, you know, 911,000. Once you save the energy, then in our world, it turns to avoided cost. It's not really a savings, but you would have been paying that next year. So in theory, it is a savings, but some people, when you use the word savings, they think you're gonna get that back, and it's an avoided cost. And that number, if power rates go up, that number will go up, because we would have had to pay that additional cost for the power to operate those lights. So, it becomes an avoided cost.
So you save even more.
Exactly.
Okay.
But that's the conservative number. And in our previous projects you see listed, we've always been conservative with our numbers. Usually some more savings.
He's not gonna let me go off on a leash.
And before we go to the next slide, on the LED lighting, I'd like to thank Dr. Baldwin and all of you over there and others that helped you, because, and if you would maybe explain this to the board, how that came to be, because you came to the School Capital Fund Commission, who then sent it to the county commission. So if you could just kind of tell that short story of how that came about, and so that everybody here is aware of it. Because the county commissioners supported this.
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
So,
she made us proud in front of the county commission.
well, I have to give credit to Clark.
Well,
This
it's
was
who
his
it-
idea originally. I came on board and he pitched this, he had this plan in place, so I ran with it.
Good times.
So, but, yeah, I mean, we basically got all of the data together to show, how many lights we had, what we would save based on our utility rate, what it would take. We had 4 pilot projects with Owen, Estes, admin, and, I'm forgetting the 4th now. I said it.
You should SD Cane Creek.
Cane Creek, thank you. So we got a chance to see how it would go and what the costs would be. And we learned a lesson too. Duke Energy supplies a rebate, which was $80 per fixture, which was great. And it's gone down to $50 a fixture. We were working with a local contractor, paying them basically $30 per fixture to install it. And that was the original plan, but when we found out the rebate was going down that much, we knew that this wouldn't be financially feasible to continue to have a contractor do this work for us. So we came up with a new plan, can we do this in-house, hire our own electricians, and work together as a team over the next several years to make this happen. So, I'm very proud of our school board, our superintendent. We pitched this to Dr. Baldwin. He supported us. We met with Brownie Newman, who was really excited about it. And it really just went from there. We went to the School Capital Funding Commission. It spiraled forward, and we went to the county commissioners. And it's been pretty awesome. Everyone's been really excited about it and fully supportive.
And there's been a little partnership developed from it,
Yeah.
because the School Capital Fund Commission and the county wanted to do the same thing for the C school. So that's in process as well. I
Yes.
think they're a little bit behind where we are in terms of implementing this, but it's also happening. It
Yeah.
doesn't affect us forward, but it affects people in this community.
Yes, and they've got a little bit of luxury with time because they're not as big as us. So they can kick back and plan a little bit more, and we're full steam ahead, so it's exciting.
Thank you.
Now you can go to that next slide that we.
Are you sure?
Well, a lot of what I said ties into this. So this graph shows our cost over time since fiscal year 6-7 to last fiscal year. I decided not to put this fiscal year in since we're not through it completely. But what I did was stuck in significant energy conservation projects with arrows here. And time points on the graph, so you can see how over time, back in
2006, 7, 7, 8, our costs were higher. We implemented this T12 to T8 retrofit, and there are certainly other factors involved, but it helped reduce our costs. Then for whatever reasons, we climbed a little bit again, and then around 2010 to 2012, we had our first energy manager, Seth McLam, on board. He did many projects, many lighting projects, the T8 gym lighting projects, the water meters, flush valves, and all of that contributed to reducing our costs significantly. And during this time too, our square footage basically was maintained. So you can see when our square footage went up with the addition of Evelyn and Coons, our costs also went up. Kind of at the same time with the Energy Star certification that happened, it qualified the school district for a lower, a high efficiency natural gas rate, which I think saved us around, it was either $40,000 or $44,000 a year. So that plays a part here. And you can see our costs have climbed a little bit and then come down just a little bit, and Anchor Intermediate comes into play here. And part of the cost factor is rates change, weather plays a factor, so there are a lot of moving parts. But with that all said, on average, we're doing great. I mean, our average cost per square foot has gone down over time, and we're at about 99 cents, $1 per square foot for the district. That's pretty good.
So when you see like a jump up on the per square foot, that's not because we're building more buildings, that has more to do with weather or rates or something like that,
No,
right?
that's actually more buildings.
But the per square foot cost wouldn't change just because you have more buildings, right?
Well,
You have more square feet, but
Yes.
yes, it's a per square foot cost.
Well, it would, because you're adding more square feet, you're cooling it, you're heating it.
so this is, the graph on the left, the big graph, is not cost per square foot.
Right.
It is just
But I'm
cost
looking at the per square foot cost.
on the right side.
Right.
Yes.
I'm looking at that. And so if that were to jump up, that's probably not about more square feet.
Yes,
That's correct,
yeah,
yes.
because we, at the, I see what you're saying.
So
at the
that's,
same
that would be
time-
about weather
would be
or
weather
rates or
related,
something like that.
Yes, so we've become more efficient,
Mhm.
even though we're adding square footage. Yeah, which comes into play with diverting costs from our utility budget. We will be adding costs to it. So, like Clark said, we look at it as diverting costs, literally. You know, it helps us when we get a utility rate hike, which may be coming next year. That's what we've heard. That's gonna help offset some of these things that we can't control, so.
And you don't know how many rate hikes we may have had over that 10-year period that you're reflecting on your graph, do you?
That's one thing that we are working on, making sure we keep track of that. We have not done a good job in the past. I can't tell you, there have been some ups and downs. And it gets super complicated, especially with power, depending on what rate structure you're on. So it's a hard number to, you can throw an average at it, but it's hard to get really specific with it.
I think it has been several years before, since the utility rate for electricity has gone up. But, you know, I basically went to our account rep and said, what's going on? What's the plan? Can you tell me anything? And he really couldn't just yet, but he did share that, you know, they're putting in for a rate increase, and Duke's plan over the next 5 years, 10 years, they're looking to increase their rates if they can.
And there's a difference between a rate structure and a fuel charge increase. So sometimes we get fuel charge increases, but that may equate to $50,000, $100,000 to us. This next year, the city of Ashland's going up on their water and sewer rates by 2 or 3%, which is,
I think it was between water and sewer, I think it was 3.5.
yeah. So what was the total? I mean, I don't remember the exact number, but it was what, $50,000 roughly, $30,000 to $50,000
Yeah.
what it costs us extra next year,
Yeah.
that we don't have control over. So we fight that, and that avoided cost really shows up. It doesn't show up, but helps out.
And our total number of square feet for our entire holdings?
Roughly 5.5 million. Right.
Next slide. And I wish I had actually put this with the other graph, but generally, so KBTUs are used to sort of standardize your units of measurement for your different utilities, kilowatt hours and CCF. So it's combined and allows you to look at and compare all of your use in one unit. So if you were to look back at the cost and square footage graph, it generally follows the same trend over the same timeline. And again, following the same trend, generally our use is going down. You know, we dipped really low in the 2011-12 time period, and we've come back up a little bit, but we have 3 new schools too. So that's most of what I wanted to share, and I touched on it when I started, but we've got a lot of exciting things going on. This is a picture of Irwin High's roof above the kitchen, and those are, that's preparation for solar panels. So we're going to be putting solar hot water up on the roof there to supply hot water to the kitchen, and I think a restroom or 2, probably this summer, maybe early fall. You know, part of an energy management plan is creating awareness and educating students, administrators, teachers about energy conservation. So slowly but surely, I'm making my way around and talking to classrooms. And something small that we're doing is handing out light switch stickers and having the students put them up for us, just as a reminder to turn off the lights, save energy, and get people thinking about it, get it as part of their habit, their daily habit. So
Your solar hot water, that's going to impact your gas usage rather than electrical, I would say.
it would, right now, it is electric hot water heater, but what we will be doing is putting in gas, running a gas line to it, putting in high efficiency gas water heaters as the backup, but the preheat will be solar. So, yeah. Any questions?
What's your personal utility bill?
Mine? It's not that high. And I'm a pit bull.
$50. We talked about that yesterday, and she was saying, my power bill's $50 a month, and I was thinking, I didn't tell you what mine was, but I have 3 boys at home, and mine's off $8.
Yeah, my husband and I live in a passive solar home, super efficient, we have solar hot water. We're gonna be putting solar PV on our house soon, but my husband's a teacher, he works at Valley Springs, and he leaves after I do, and he leaves all the lights on, and I can,
Just curious, so when Duke Energy sends out that thing and says, your house is here, this is what happens to me, your house is here and the lowest average is down here. Yeah, it's not that way on your bill, is it?
We appreciate the board support, because this allows us to do what we need to do to capture the, possibilities when they arise, because they are short-lived. The LED, we see that the rebate, when the system first came out, if they were going to give you $80 for that light, that might last for 2 or 3 years. Now, you see that lasting for 1 year, and then they reduce it. So the timing is of essence on most of these projects.
I appreciate what you do. I always learn a whole lot. I will tell the board that I was asking Clark why they put all those automatic flush things on the toilets. And he very kindly told me that let's see if I've got this right, when there's a power outage or a pipe that's frozen, they don't have, maintenance doesn't have to go in and personally flush every toilet it automatically does itself. Now, did I listen to that when you told me? How about that?
When we lose water, we don't have to go through and flush them all.
Isn't that
They
amazing?
can figure themselves.
And I think any ways that we can, as you are doing, tie this in with the students in the classroom. I mean, it
Yes.
really fits with our STEM focus. There's gonna be more and more jobs in this area in the future, I think. So there's the cost savings, there's it's the right thing to do for the good of the planet thing, but then also the opportunity for learning in our students.
That's one of our goals. We, along with facilities, are working towards the dashboard theory, where we can, one of my goals is so each building, you can sit there and see what's happening, cause and effect, that you can compete in competition or compete amongst your peers across the county. That takes time, money, people. That's, so it's,
And
but
if
that's
the students
something
in
that
this
would
moment
be.
action, how much better, yeah.
Right. So, thank you.
Thank you all.
Good job, Cassie.
One last question about the power. Projectors. Are we deploying LED bulbs for these projectors? 'Cause I know those have
I do
got
not
to be
believe
consuming a
so.
lot of.
They do. I don't know that question. I know that Barry's always looking at the latest greatest. I do know that most of those have a sleep mode, that after a certain period of time, and then we've also put in a script that we turn all the computers off at a certain time. We've got to
Well,
be-
only computer labs right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
computer labs, so. Used to, we turn them all off, and then that caused some problems.
Yeah.
Now we- But get excited when you start messing with the computer.
All right, Mr. Perry?
Okay, two more items. We'll go through them fairly quickly, but I wanted to update you on community high school.
Yes.
This is the site plan for the current design, and I say current design because we had a different game plan that had to be severely modified because when we put it out, when our construction manager put it out to his subcontractors, we totally blew the budget. So, fortunately, that's a great process. It wasn't bid day when that happened, because that would have been really ugly. So we were in design and we've had to pull back. We had hoped to come to you this month with a contract for general construction so they could hit the ground running as soon as school let out. We probably lost 2 months because we've had to go back and totally rethink it based on what direction from the contractor, what really costs and what doesn't. So this is the revised site plan for the school. But the probably the biggest thing we did is we pulled the daycare, which is sitting right about here, we've pulled that into the school. It will have a real separation wall and the ability, if that program were to disappear, to pull it to incorporate that into the school. But we have kind of a double corridor condition. Here's the school corridor, a wall, and behind that is a corridor for the daycare. These are playgrounds. We had a game plan where we thought was really cost effective to purchase modulars and make a little modular city here. The utility costs, the cost of the modulars, and modulars are inexpensive when you buy what's off of the shelf, and you don't ask them to modify it much. When you start asking them to tweak it, the prices go up, and it proved to be, we actually bid the project, formally bid it, and it came in way over, and we bid the site as well. The utilities getting there were very expensive. So this is a much more cost-effective solution, and
So what did we lose? What was inside the building?
we lost one classroom that was a flex classroom. And when all is said and done, and if you recall, there's a gymnasium that we're keeping in our classroom here. We lost space in our courtyard space in between them. We tightened it all up. And we did rework the admin area. We were forced to find efficiencies. And the school is on board with this. it may be a better plan than what we had. One of the big things is we wanted the whole school to be on exactly the same level. Right now, you have to go up a lot of steps to get into the gym, and then you go up and down and up and down. We do have a ramp between the gym and the kitchen, cafeteria, and the food lab over here. So it's not on the same level, but by lowering the building and providing a ramp, which, like at Williams, we have kind of ramps like that. It still feels like a hallway. It's a small sacrifice to make for very significant savings.
And we're still keeping the facade of the building on that side over there?
And so that's the other big change, is we had intended to, this is the existing building, it's kind of a, a horseshoe shape here, and we still are demoing a portion of it. This is actually outside area, that's the face of the building. We were going to demo everything inside that and basically build a new building inside this facade. That proved to be really expensive because you have to support those walls while you're building it, and that ended up being a really high dollar cost. So basically we are gutting this portion of that building. We're demoing the remainder here. And we're going to use it as one floor. There's 3 floors. One floor is kind of below grade as it's a classroom area, but it's halfway below grade. And then we have another level that's classrooms and the admin is there. We're going to utilize that second level. And then the 3rd floor, we're taking that out, and the cafeteria and kind of multi-purpose space will be a high bay space now. So that's the only function that will happen here, and it has proven to be way less expensive, and we get everything we need, and it will be a bigger cafeteria than we were planning, and it will have this kind of high space that will work as a performance space, or, they don't really have an auditorium, so it can kind of become the auditorium.
So we are demoing the front of the building?
No, we're keeping that, and we're keeping a lot of what's in there. We're keeping the roof, and we're keeping this floor, and we're taking out what's in between. What's below will be just mechanical space. It will not be used, but you will see the facade of the building will be there. We're renovating it as opposed to gutting it and building something inside.
And then to the right of where the gym is, it will have a different kind of facade, or?
Yes, it will. It will have the same facade we were planning that you see drawings for. It will be a metal frame with an insulated metal panel facade. So there will be a contrast between the old and the new.
So the kitchen and the cafeteria for the kids are gonna be on?
Right here, on that level, on the main level.
Main level, ground level.
This is all main level, gym, cafeteria, all on the same level, and then this is our ramp that goes down to the new admin and classroom.
Where will shipping and receiving for the kitchen?
That will happen back here. That's an outdoor basketball area. This is the gym, and that will all happen in here, in this area. And then we have a modular that we're relocating here, and then this is the ag area. Then we'll get a new greenhouse to meet the Office of Civil Rights report. We're going to use the ag modular over here as their classroom and their head house. So that's another efficiency and another savings we didn't plan. But primarily the daycare is what really knocked us out of the park. So we lost 2 months. You're going to see at your June 30th meeting, if all goes well, the bids and proposals to start construction. Okay, next one. Here's the floor plan. You can see a little bit better. Here's cafeteria tables in this renovated area. This is that shipping receiving area, a basketball court area. That's the past modular that we're relocating. Here's the gymnasium. As an alternate, we have some significant renovations. We may not get, we're held hostage by the really heated construction environment, so we do have some alternates in here. We're hopeful that we're able to put a classroom in there and kind of a weight room like you see in all our high schools. If not, we just won't be able to do that, and we'll update the HVAC and the lighting, but that's as far as we'll be able to go, and the roof. This is the media center. The entrance kind of works from here. You do go up some stairs or a ramp. This is the administration suite. You can see the control doors here, so that if there's after-hours events happening here, you can't wander up and down the school. There's a stair and an elevator. These are the, let me see, science is upstairs right here. Classrooms, oh, that's the daycare, I'm sorry. That's the 3 levels of daycare and support areas for daycare. The playground will be out here. Second floor classrooms. There's kind of a second administrative suite. This school has an inordinate number of visiting professionals that are both Buncombe County Schools employees and outside agencies. So there's a lot of these kind of pull-out spaces and landing places for the visiting professionals in the school, more than any other school, really. And that's kind of the highlights of the plan. This will flesh out, and the design team has really worked hard with the contractor cooperatively. We give them feedback of what's acceptable and what isn't, and the direction we want to go. But they're really doing the heavy lifting and working together, talking to contractors to try to get this project in a budget in a very, very heated construction environment here in Asheville.
So when this project is completed, that will be a working kitchen that the food is not shipped in, brought in from?
Right now it is brought in from Owen High, I believe. They also bring in food to the daycare. The plan is for a working kitchen, if we can afford it. We're going to do the rough-ins so that in the future we could add the equipment if we have to. But that is, we got to just look at every option we have to make sure the project is buildable. And so it's designed to be a full working kitchen, not as big as another high school, but a fully functional kitchen. But that's something that's pretty easy to just take the equipment out to save money, but we got to have the rough-ins and the ability to add it back in the future.
Is it similar to the Discovery Patio?
Yeah, it's not unsimilar to Discovery. This one's a little bit bigger, and we had some lessons learned from, you call it a catering kitchen. What is that? Catering kitchen, you heat things up a little bit. This is you can prep food here, start from scratch. You can a little bit in Discovery, but this is a little bit more involved. And then the food, another benefit of this change is we were able to bring the foods program over here right next to the cafeteria, join all our utilities. That's a good program. That and ag is has been popular there. So we have it right here, and then they could serve food out in here in the cafeteria. So that was a good benefit of that.
Well, if I'm going to make a comment,
Mm-hmm.
I worked at Community High as a counselor, and I can tell you, based upon experience with those students, that food is the #1 identifier with them.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is any way possible that we can do anything to have that a working kitchen,
High priority.
make it a high priority, because that is so important to those students, because sometimes they feel like they get whatever is left over.
Yeah.
And I just was really angry.
Okay, I appreciate that guidance, because those are the kinds of tough decisions we have to make. And the school does have a food pantry as well in here. It has a place for a student to shower in private, and has a closed pantry too. So those are some special, unique needs at this school.
You had 2 options there, one full service, one not. What's the difference in the 2 cost-wise? How much money?
I couldn't tell you that right now, but we're talking, $100,000, $200,000.
That's close.
That can float the boat, or
That helps.
maybe not. This is School Capital Fund Commission money, and it ends here.
Yeah, I know.
If you don't have enough, go find some. If you have too much, give it back.
I'm thinking of an alternate source that gives me a conversation
Yeah, and that's always a possibility, yeah. That you can supplement the project, but that's what we have, and that's our goal, to make it work within that original budget that we envisioned.
In the early childhood area, I assume you have the 3 spaces based upon age?
Yes.
Breakdown?
It is.
Now, will one of those be a nursery?
Yes, one is infants to 2.
Okay. And the reason I said that, experience we had at AB Tech, we had the same thing. And there was different ratios of adult caregivers to the instruments that had to be addressed. There was also issues of observation space.
Huge.
Windows and places where you can be not in the room, but you have to have line of sight.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then also outdoors, the playgrounds, there's a whole set of standards there.
It's
I'm sure you're
intense.
familiar with that. I just want to throw it out, make sure that that's not something that.
I am learning every day.
Yeah, you will. Forever.
But I think we're really close.
We do have, is it 4 of our high schools or 3 of our high schools? Irwin, Robertson, Reynolds, I think there's a 4th that have those daycares. Max is exactly right. I've never seen anything like those regulations. I mean, they are.
And the difference is this one has infants.
Yeah, that's huge.
Other high schools do
That's
not.
probably-
So that's
that's on
extra
top.
regulation.
1-to-2 ratio or something. It's very, very tight.
So the size of this, there's rules and regs about the number of kids and the square footage to provide them. We've met with the daycare folks that the county has hired out to do this, and we're working very closely with them. In fact, we had a conference call showing them the revised plan, and like you said, observation, this was the biggest objection. Here's the main office, in the main entrance. They didn't like the fact that there's a little hiding spot there. You know, so those,
Right.
we're really working through the details. We're really close, we might not quite be there, but we've got to keep stuff moving to meet our schedule. I think we will be, originally we had hoped to be in this main 2-story building at the fall next year. I don't think that's going to happen. We've lost 2 months, and I believe we need to plan on kind of a Christmas change on fall of 18. And then, so it's multi-phased. The first kind of half phase is get the modulars and such out of this area and put them here this summer so that it's up and running for the school. What you're not seeing here is an ag modular and the kitchen. They'll remain in place. So we build this building, then we can move the daycare out and demo the daycare building, and we can do demo here once we move the kids over. So that will be, again, we may be a Christmas changeover. We may lose 3 months on both projects and have a Christmas of 2019 instead of fall of 2019 move in here. Our contractor's really motivated to bring the overall project schedule within the same time frame, but we've lost a couple of months for redesign.
What's around the outside, are those sidewalks?
Those are sidewalks, yeah. Yep, those are just sidewalks.
You know, the beauty of Tim's plan is that it keeps that school functioning where we have critical areas of demolition, or it's done during out of the school year. But I've got to remember that is a 90-year-old building, and I'll tell you that staff, I think they're going to be patient because they're so excited.
They're very
And
excited.
for those kids to have that opportunity for something that is new and something that's kind of grabbed your heart.
The other thing, when you say that about a 9-year-old building, my experience with renovation at the YWCA, when we were doing sort of a similar thing with phasing it and running our programs while we were doing the construction and all that, which was difficult. But also with renovation, unlike new construction, as you know, it seems like there are many more unknowns that you're likely to run into. So would we have a larger contingency on a project like this than we would on new construction?
You do on a renovation, that portion of it will have a higher contingency than the new construction. New construction, the unknowns are really what you find when you dig up. The site is primarily by far the biggest one. And then beyond that, the changes are are conflicts in the design or owner wishes to tweak it after the fact. Okay, and then if there's no more questions on community high, Dr. Baldwin's going to update us on the Zoyter pool.
His favorite topic.
My favorite, my all-time favorite.
You want that? There's a little button.
This, to a degree, this, and I'm going to be pretty quick, because I just want to get you pretty quick update of where we are. The big key for this project is going to be when we go out to bid in June, because it sort of parallels, does parallel what Tim talked about with community, in that our original plan was different. This is a single level, with the exception of where you see this additional seating and additional restroom area. This is all potential add-on, cost being around $870,000. Now, we had some interest in, with a group of parents that came in and looked at it and made some recommendations on and this was back in the Aquatic Center, and I'm not to take you back too far, but you recall we went to the board, what's the?
CRA?
Yeah, the Tourism Development Board. And we made a proposal where the current waterside is, so that essentially it became an aquatic center. And in simplistic terms, and with pools, I'm as simplistic as you get. This is a single pool facility. It's a 25-yard by 25 meter. That meets all the competitive requirements in the High School Athletic Association, in the AAU type group, Swim USA, I think is that particular organization. Actually even qualifies for college meets, that particular pool. Now the other opposite is the large pool, which if you've ever gone to Asheville, to the Parks and Rec, that's a 50-meter pool. Okay, so there's a short course, long course, there's a short course. This resembles more the current Zorba pool. But we did include this option at any time, once this is built, to add on. So it's there. And you do realize that across the county, we've had various groups, whether it be booster organizations. I know at Reynolds High School, I had 3 parents that came in and wanted to look at some upgrades, renovations, and athletic facilities. Our policy allows that. The end of that policy, though, clearly states that whatever funds, whatever upgrades, renovations, that becomes the property, ultimately, of Buncombe County Board of Education. Okay. You also are aware $6 million was placed into our budget through the county. And so we have, when we initially looked at this, it was a 2-story model, and this seating was in this area on top. So it was 2 levels, and with the top level being seating over top of the pool for observers to watch these. There were some other amenities in it, additional classroom space. We had additional office space. We really put in.
It was nice.
It was nice. It was nice. It made Gardner look like a kiddie pool. The problem was when we went out and spec our costs, and again, this is a tough environment to build. I think everybody realizes that. Not as much from the GC and as a subcontractor. They have far more work than they can handle from a local standpoint. We went out, that $6 million budget, the cost went to $7.9 million. So we quickly assembled the team. And by the way, we've had our high school coaches, our representatives for our high school coaches in on all meetings. We've had the YMCA represented because, again, you've heard me say this, it's not our intent to get into the swim operations or maintenance business. but I'm simply serving in the role of fulfilling initially a contract that goes back through the county commissioners that the absorbent pool would be replaced. And with the funding that we've been provided, that has been my primary mission. So as we go out on bid for this particular model, and again, this is really geared, focused on meeting the needs of our high schools. And let me tell you, the best part about this pool, the current absorbent pool has 6 lanes. In fact, the majority of pools across the county are 6 lanes. This is 10 lanes. So what does that do for our high school teams? That allows 2 high schools at the same time to practice. That's huge. Now we have high school swim teams. Owen, for example, has been using the McDowell YMCA facility. Peggy may be aware of that. They have at times used the pool at Warren Wilson that was shut down, but now commissioners have provided additional funds, so that might be an option for them. We know that Irwin High School for a number of years has used the Asheville School, which is a nice facility. We know North Buncombe has utilized Mars Hill. Inca High School is the only one of our high schools that does not have a team. I truly am talking with Tanya. We envision that as soon as this facility is available, we're going to see a team coming from them because it's a great sport for high school athletes. So with all of this in mind, I do believe when those bids come back, let's see where our numbers are. Ideally, we're going to stay within that $6 million budget, but if we are slightly over, then I think we pull back together and determine, because it does serve, and I will say this, absorbent pool right now, that I've said this publicly, I have concerns in terms of its age, its wear. It is an old pool. We think there's issues with it. County believes there's issues in terms of the loss of water, but from just a safety standpoint, it is time for that facility to be either leveled or renovated, whatever direction it goes, and that this facility is provided for our kids. Because it would serve for meets now, competitive meets. Our high schools have more meets scheduled at the current absorbent pool, competitive meets. It's just that they can't all practice. They have to practice one at a time because of the 6 lanes. I think there's some incredible opportunities in partnering with the YMCA. One of my discussions with Paul Vest, and sort of we're both locked arms on this, is we would love to see the day come when every 4th grade child or every 5th grade child in Buncombe County schools, along with Asheville City, would have the option to be taught, maybe not full swim lessons, but be taught survival swim. Swim safety, because that continues, when you look across the state, it continues to be one of the highest causes of death for young people. So I think there's some tremendous value in this, but we'll come back to the table after those bids come in. This will be, and as it is, as basic as it is now become, it will still become one of the best facilities around.
So Tony, in terms of this alternate, if we don't have the funding to build it now, would we rough it in, or we just wouldn't build it at all and that would be a wall across there?
Well, Tim, you want to?
Yeah, we will put, if we choose not to do it, the base bid is to put a column, a beam, and a column buried in that exterior wall, and to rough in the plumbing and electrical to kind of stub right there, so that it will be a possibility in the future, but we would have a wall with a joint that could be removed and added onto. So that's in the base bid.
This could potentially add in around 400 seats, and it's not showing it, but we do have roll out bleacher seating, removable bleacher seating that would cover, we estimate 180 to 200 around these three areas. What we have said is that we do not, as we look at the design of this, we don't want to sacrifice air quality or water quality. That's a huge issue right now. What happens with the chlorine, what happens with, in terms of the humidity piece. So all that will be upgraded, but it will be, and our coaches, why, everybody at the table, we would have loved to have the two-story structure, but again, we've got to meet the budget. Tim, anything I missed?
No, I think you did it there. Of course, the other pool will operate until this one is done. And we're looking at swim season 2018, which, somewhere around October. September, October, they start.
The budget to demo the old pool, is that part of this bid process, or will it just sit there? What happens with that?
We'll probably create as a separate project, but yeah, we need to think about that as a,
That's not coming out of the 6 million.
No, that's actually part of what we're talking with the county about. But we've also been approached by a parent booster group there that would like to see that space. They would take that project on and use the existing pool space. Now, you've been out there, you've got the wooden structure, which is rooms up top, 2 stories, and porch deck around, and then you have the concrete structure of the pool itself. We're talking about that concrete structure. But even then, you would have to demolish the wooden structure. So that's got to happen to some degree anyway. If we get this built, everybody has to show up with their swimsuit.
I'll do some counting my time in there. All kinds of other life.
Any questions from board members? Let's do it. If no questions for these presenters, then I would entertain a motion to, I don't know whether we adjourn or move on down the hall. It's a motion to adjourn. No, she moved. Do we have a second?
I second with one comment.
Certainly.
Again, thanking Tim, everyone, Clark and everybody. There's a huge amount of work right here. And present it in a form that's understandable, walk us through, handhold us, and get us where we need to be. That's a big deal.
And we appreciate you. We don't tell you enough, but we appreciate you.
Great support.